The Black Templars were born from fire and devastation, forged in the aftermath of the most terrible betrayal humanity had ever known. As the embers of the Horus Heresy cooled in the early years of the 31st millennium, the Imperium found itself forever changed. The Emperor lay shattered upon the Golden Throne, his vision of unity in tatters. His loyal son, Rogel Dorn, Primarch of the Imperial Fists, stood amid the ruins of a dream, faced with the task of rebuilding an empire while mourning a father. The second founding came as a practical necessity rather than a triumphant new beginning. The remaining loyal Space Marine legions posed a potential threat to Imperial stability, too much power concentrated in too few hands. Roboute Guilliman's Codex Astartes proposed a solution: divide the legions into smaller chapters of no more than 1,000 battle brothers. This restructuring would prevent any single military commander from wielding the power to overthrow the Imperium. Rogel Dorn initially resisted. The Imperial Fists had bled profusely defending Terra, their numbers already diminished. Further division seemed an insult to their sacrifice. For a time, tensions between Dorn and Guilliman threatened to escalate into open conflict. Eventually, however, Dorn relented, recognizing the wisdom in preventing another heresy. The Imperial Fists Legion would be split, though not without Dorn leaving his distinct mark on the process. At Dorn's side throughout the heresy stood First Captain Sigismund, a warrior whose skill with a blade was matched only by his unwavering loyalty. During the Siege of Terra, Sigismund had taken up the mantle of Emperor's champion, swearing oaths of moment and engaging in single combat with the most fearsome champions of the traitor legions. His blade had tasted the blood of countless enemies, including several of Abaddon's chosen warriors. Sigismund had become more than a Space Marine captain. He had transformed into a living symbol of retribution. When the time came to divide the legion, Dorn made a decision that would echo through the millennia. He called Sigismund to his chambers within the partially rebuilt Imperial Palace. The exact words exchanged between Primarch and First Captain remain unrecorded, but the substance of Dorn's directive was clear. While most successor chapters would defend specific regions or serve particular functions, Sigismund's chapter would embrace perpetual crusade. This directive came with a certain irony. Sigismund, despite his unquestioned loyalty during the heresy, had fallen from Dorn's favor in the years before. The first captain had been influenced by the words of Euphrati Keeler, one of the first imperial saints who preached faith in the emperor as a divine being. This religious fervor was at odds with the imperial truth that the emperor himself had established. Dorn, ever practical and loyal to his father's vision, had been disappointed by Sigismund's embrace of superstition. Yet in the aftermath of the heresy, with the emperor now sustained by the Golden Throne and worshipped by many as a god, Dorn recognized the power of faith as a unifying force. Sigismund's zealous temperament, once a source of concern, now became an asset. The crusading chapter would channel that zeal outward against the enemies of mankind. Sigismund took up his new role with characteristic determination. The chapter he would lead adopted black armor, adorned with white crosses and crusader iconography, a stark departure from the yellow of the Imperial Fists. They named themselves the Black Templars, embodying both mourning for the fallen emperor and the righteous wrath they would unleash upon his enemies. From the beginning, the Black Templars diverged from the organizational structure prescribed in the Codex Astartes. While Guilliman's tome called for 10 companies of roughly 100 Marines each, with the first company composed of veterans and the 10th of neophytes, Sigismund organized his chapter around crusades. Each crusade force operated semi-autonomously, led by a marshal who answered to the High Marshal, Sigismund himself. This structure allowed the chapter to prosecute multiple campaigns simultaneously across vast distances of space. The size of each crusade force varied according to its mission, ranging from small strike forces of a few dozen Marines to massive armies numbering in the hundreds. This fluid organization made it difficult for imperial administrators to track the chapter's exact numbers. While officially adhering to the 1,000 Marine limit, the Black Templars' distributed nature and constant recruitment allowed them to grow considerably larger over time, a fact conveniently overlooked by authorities grateful for their battlefield prowess. Training methods within the chapter also diverged from Codex norms. Rather than maintaining a dedicated scout company, the Black Templars paired neophytes directly with full battle brothers in a variation of the ancient Terran knightly tradition. Each initiate served as a squire to an experienced marine, learning through direct observation and participation in combat. This practice reinforced the chapter's medieval knightly character, while ensuring that combat skills were passed directly from warrior to warrior. The spiritual practices of the Black Templars represented perhaps their most significant departure from Guilliman's prescriptions. Where the Codex advocated a stoic, disciplined approach to war, the Black Templars embraced religious fervor. They did not maintain a librarius viewing psychic powers with suspicion. Instead, they channeled their spiritual energy into combat rituals, oaths of moment, and battlefield litanies. The position of Emperor's Champion, first held by Sigismund himself, became institutionalized. Before major battles, a brother experiencing visions would be selected to bear the black sword and seek out enemy champions. These divergences from the Codex were not mere rebelliousness. They reflected the specific mission Dorn had entrusted to Sigismund, to wage eternal war against the enemies of mankind. A crusading chapter required flexibility, independence, and spiritual fortitude that rigid adherence to the Codex might hinder. Dorn, pragmatic as ever, recognized that different weapons served different purposes. The gene seed of the Black Templars, inherited directly from Rogel Dorn, shaped their character as profoundly as Sigismund's leadership. The Sons of Dorn are known throughout the Imperium for their stubbornness. Once committed to a course of action, they rarely deviate regardless of obstacles. This trait manifests in the Black Templars as an absolute refusal to retreat unless strategically necessary. Where other chapters might withdraw to fight another day, the Black Templars frequently press attacks against overwhelming odds, trusting in their skill and the Emperor's favor to carry them through. This stubbornness extends to their beliefs as well. Once the chapter embraced faith in the Emperor as a divine being, no argument or evidence could dissuade them. While the ecclesiarchy's doctrines evolved over the millennia with political necessities, the Black Templars maintained their own interpretation of the imperial creed with unwavering certainty. From Dorn, the Black Templars also inherited an obsessive attention to detail in preparation for war. Before battle, each Marine meticulously inspects his war gear, rehearses tactical plans, and contemplates his duty. The chapter's armorers are renowned for their skill, maintaining ancient weapons and armor with reverent care. This perfectionism extends to their ships and fortifications as well, though unlike their progenitor chapter, the Black Templars channel this tendency into mobile assets rather than permanent defenses. The Primarch's legendary skill in defensive warfare translated, somewhat paradoxically, into the Black Templars' offensive expertise. Understanding the principles of fortification allows them to identify and exploit weaknesses in enemy defenses. Where Dorn excelled at creating impregnable positions, his Black Templar descendants specialize in breaching them, a different application of the same fundamental knowledge. Perhaps most significantly, the Black Templars inherited Dorn's uncompromising loyalty. The Primarch had been the Emperor's Praetorian, responsible for defending Terra itself. Even after the Emperor's internment in the Golden Throne, Dorn remained steadfast in his duty, never wavering despite the crushing weight of responsibility. The Black Templars channel this loyalty into religious devotion, but its essential character remains unchanged, absolute commitment to duty regardless of personal cost. This combination of stubbornness, attention to detail, and unwavering loyalty made the Black Templars ideally suited for their role as perpetual crusaders. Where other chapters might grow weary of endless war or question the purpose of their campaigns, the Black Templars prosecute their mission with the same zeal in the 41st millennium as they did in the 31st. In the early years following their founding, the Black Templars established practices that would define them for millennia to come. Sigismund instituted the tradition of the Feast of Blades, a ritual combat that demonstrated both the chapter's martial focus and its connections to its Imperial Fists heritage. He established the position of Reclusiarch as central to the chapter's structure, ensuring that spiritual leadership would guide the Black Templars' crusades. Most importantly, he set the chapter on its endless path of war, declaring that the Black Templars would know no peace while enemies of the Emperor still drew breath. The first Black Templars crusade launched from Terra itself, with Sigismund leading his warriors against remnants of the traitor legions still lurking within the Sol system. This campaign established the chapter's reputation for relentless pursuit of the enemy. Where the Imperial fists had been known for their stoic defense, the Black Templars quickly gained renown for their aggressive shock assaults and their warriors' skill in close combat. As the crusade pushed outward from Terra, the chapter established its first fortress monastery aboard a massive vessel named the Eternal Crusader. This choice reflected their nature. Unlike other chapters who claimed worlds as their domains, the Black Templars would make their home among the stars, always moving toward the next battle. The ship served as both headquarters and symbol, a mobile cathedral of war from which Sigismund could direct multiple crusades across the fragmented Imperium. As the newly formed Black Templars departed Terra in their strike cruisers, the galaxy they faced was a broken reflection of what had once been. The Imperium lay fractured, with countless worlds cut off by warp storms or fallen to enemies both old and new. Communication networks had collapsed, supply lines were severed, and the dream of unity that had driven the Great Crusade seemed all but extinguished. Yet it was in this darkness that Sigismund's purpose burned brightest. The first High Marshal understood that the traitor legions, though defeated at Terra, had not been destroyed. They had scattered across the stars, many retreating to the Eye of Terror, but others remained hidden throughout Imperial space, nursing their hatred and plotting revenge. These remnants posed a dire threat to an already weakened Imperium, and Sigismund vowed they would find no respite while he drew breath. In the year 814 of the 31st millennium, Sigismund launched what Imperial scholars would later call the First Templar Crusade, though the Black Templars themselves simply saw it as the beginning of an endless campaign. Their initial targets were not the distant strongholds of chaos, but rather the hidden enclaves of traitors within what should have been secure Imperial territory. Intelligence gathered by Imperial agents identified several star systems in the Segmentum Solar, where Word-bearers and Alpha Legion elements had established footholds during the confusion of the Heresy's aftermath. The Black Templars struck at the Lastrati system first, their fleet emerging from the warp without warning. The Word-bearers' warband that had corrupted this once loyal mining colony had spent years fortifying their position, transforming the principal hive city into a twisted monument to their dark gods. They had not, however, prepared for the fury that Sigismund brought to bear. The assault began with a precision bombardment that crippled the traitors' void defenses, followed immediately by drop pod insertions directly into the heart of enemy territory. Sigismund himself led the vanguard, the black sword in his hands cleaving through ceramite and flesh with equal ease. Survivors of this engagement described the High Marshal as fighting with cold precision rather than blind rage, each strike calculated, each movement economical, yet executed with such speed that few could follow his blade with the naked eye. Before this battle, Sigismund gathered his warriors and instituted what would become one of the chapter's defining traditions, the taking of oaths of moment. Each battle brother knelt before the Reclusiarch, placing his hand upon the Book of Judgments, and swore to accomplish specific deeds in the coming conflict. Some vowed to be the first to breach enemy lines, others to slay a specific number of foes, still others to recover sacred relics defiled by the traitors. These were not merely personal goals, but solemn vows made before the emperor, and failure to fulfill them required penance. The tradition served multiple purposes. It focused each warrior's mind on specific objectives, rather than the overwhelming scale of the crusade itself. It fostered a spirit of controlled competition that drove the battle brothers to greater feats of valor. Perhaps most importantly, it reinforced the spiritual dimension of their warfare. These were not merely soldiers fighting for territory, but knights fulfilling sacred oaths. After cleansing Lastrati, the Black Templars moved methodically through the nearby systems, rooting out corruption wherever they found it. These early campaigns established tactical patterns that would characterize the chapter for millennia to come. Rather than relying on elaborate strategic deception or complex maneuvers, the Black Templars favored direct assault against identified enemy strongpoints. Their doctrine emphasized shock, momentum, and close-quarters combat, with extensive use of drop pods and teleportation to bypass enemy defenses and strike directly at command centers. This approach was not born of tactical simplicity, but rather a deep understanding of their own strengths. The Black Templars excelled in close combat, their training emphasizing blade work and martial skill above all else. By forcing engagements on these terms, they maximized their advantages while denying enemies the opportunity to employ ranged firepower or strategic withdrawal. The early Crusade fleets were relatively modest in size compared to what the chapter would later command. The flagship Eternal Crusader served as the mobile headquarters from which Sigismund directed operations, supported by a handful of strike cruisers and numerous smaller vessels. Each ship functioned as both transport and mobile base, carrying not only the warriors themselves, but also their support staff, armories, and chapels. This naval organization reflected a fundamental shift in how the chapter operated compared to their legion forebears. Where the Imperial Fists had maintained massive fortress monasteries on key worlds, the Black Templars established a network of chapter keeps, smaller fortifications that served as recruitment centers, supply depots, and staging areas for Crusade forces. These keeps were never intended as permanent homes, but rather as way stations supporting the chapter's perpetual campaign. The first such keep was established on Rhinox, a frontier world near the edge of the Segmentum Solar. The fortress was built not according to standard imperial templates, but rather in the style of ancient Terran castles, with high walls, imposing towers, and extensive underground chambers. At its heart stood a chapel dedicated to the Emperor, its walls inscribed with the names of battle brothers who had fallen in the Crusade thus far. Similar keeps would be established on dozens of worlds over the following centuries, each maintaining a small permanent garrison, while the majority of the chapter's strength remained mobile. This distributed structure solved several practical problems. It allowed the Black Templars to recruit from a wide range of worlds rather than relying on a single source of aspirants. It provided logistical support across vast distances, enabling Crusade forces to replenish supplies without returning to a central location. Perhaps most importantly, it made the chapter exceptionally difficult to track or target. There was no single fortress whose fall would cripple their operations. By 819, 5 years into their crusade, the Black Templars had expanded their operations beyond the Segmentum Solar. Reports of a significant Alpha Legion presence in the Helios cluster prompted Sigismund to dispatch a Crusade force under Marshal Bohemond, comprising 300 battle brothers and supporting elements. This marked an important development in the chapter's structure. For the first time, a major campaign would be conducted without the High Marshal's direct oversight. Bohemond's Crusade, as it came to be known, demonstrated the effectiveness of the Black Templars' decentralized command structure. Operating independently for over a decade, this force cleansed 7 major systems of traitor influence while establishing 3 new chapter keeps. Marshal Bohemond maintained communication with Sigismund when possible, but warp conditions often prevented regular contact for years at a time. In such circumstances, the Marshal relied on the chapter's core principles and his own judgment rather than specific orders. This autonomy was made possible by the Black Templars' spiritual cohesion. Unlike chapters that depended on rigid chains of command and precise tactical doctrines, the Black Templars were united by shared faith and purpose. A marshal could be trusted to make decisions aligned with the chapter's ethos, because that ethos had been internalized at the deepest level. This characteristic would prove invaluable as the Crusade expanded across the stars, with dozens of separate forces operating simultaneously by the end of the 1st century. The Black Templars' religious practices during this early period were still evolving, distinct from both the secular traditions of most Space Marine chapters and the increasingly formalized imperial cult. Sigismund had been influenced by the teachings of Euphrates Keeler even before the Heresy's end, embracing the belief that the Emperor was not merely humanity's ruler, but its divine protector. This perspective had been controversial during the Great Crusade, when the imperial truth explicitly rejected religious worship, but in the Heresy's aftermath, such faith found fertile ground. The chapter's devotional practices were martial in nature, focusing on the Emperor as the ultimate warrior rather than a distant deity. They venerated him through deeds rather than mere words. Each enemy slain was an offering. Each world reclaimed an act of worship. Their battle liturgies emphasized themes of judgment, retribution, and purification, with frequent references to fire and the sword as instruments of the emperor's will. Notably, the Black Templars developed these practices independently of the emerging ecclesiarchy. While the official imperial creed was taking shape on Terra through political compromise and theological debate, the Black Templars forged their beliefs in the crucible of endless war. This independence would occasionally create tensions with imperial religious authorities in later millennia, but during the early Crusade period, such conflicts were minimal. The Imperium had more pressing concerns than theological orthodoxy. The chapter's rejection of psychic abilities also took firm root during these early years. Unlike many of their cousin chapters, the Black Templars maintained no librarius, viewing psychic powers with deep suspicion. This stance was not merely doctrinal but practical. The tumultuous state of the warp following the heresy made psychic manifestations particularly dangerous. Several early encounters with traitor psykers reinforced this caution, as the Black Templars witnessed firsthand how such powers could be conduits for demonic influence. Instead of psychic warfare, the chapter developed extensive anti-psyker tactics. They crafted specialized equipment for neutralizing enemy psykers, trained in mental techniques to resist psychic assault, and emphasized rapid elimination of such threats on the battlefield. This approach would prove effective against many foes, though it occasionally placed the Black Templars at a disadvantage when facing enemies with overwhelming psychic capabilities. By the year 830, the Black Templars had established a presence in all 5 segmentums, with major Crusade forces operating in regions as distant as the Eastern Fringe and the Halo Stars. Their numbers had grown significantly through aggressive recruitment, with some estimates suggesting they commanded nearly 3,000 battle brothers, well beyond the 1,000 Marine limit prescribed by the Codex Astartes. This expansion was not the result of deliberate defiance, but rather a natural consequence of their distributed structure and continuous combat operations. Each Crusade force recruited and trained neophytes as needed, inducting them directly into their ranks rather than sending them to a central training facility. With dozens of such forces operating independently and no centralized administrative body tracking total chapter strength, the Black Templars simply grew organically. Imperial authorities, when they noticed this discrepancy at all, generally chose to overlook it. The Imperium needed every warrior it could muster, and the Black Templars' loyalty was beyond question. Sigismund himself remained at the forefront of the chapter's most challenging engagements throughout these early decades. Despite his already considerable age, he had been among the first space marines created during the unification wars on Terra. The High Marshal showed no signs of slowing. If anything, his skills seemed to sharpen with time, his blade work becoming ever more precise, his tactical acumen more refined. Those who fought alongside him spoke of his unwavering focus, as though nothing existed for him beyond the next battle, the next enemy to be brought to justice. The Black Templars stand apart from their fellow Adeptus Astartes, not only in their zealous devotion, but in the very structure of their chapter. While most Space Marine chapters adhere to the organizational principles laid out in the Codex Astartes, with 10 companies of roughly 100 warriors each, the Black Templars maintain a fluid, Crusade-based hierarchy that better serves their eternal war. At the apex of this structure stands the High Marshal, successor to Sigismund and supreme commander of all Black Templar forces across the galaxy. The High Marshal bears the responsibility of determining the chapter's strategic direction, identifying which threats warrant the formation of new crusades, and allocating resources between existing campaigns. He also serves as the chapter's representative in dealings with other imperial authorities, though such diplomatic functions typically receive minimal attention compared to martial duties. Below the High Marshal serve the Marshals, each commanding a crusade fleet. The number of active marshals varies according to the chapter's needs, typically ranging between 10 and 20. Each marshal operates with considerable autonomy, often separated from his peers by thousands of light years and unreliable communication. A marshal must be not only a skilled warrior and tactician, but also a capable administrator, responsible for recruitment, supply, and maintaining the spiritual well-being of his forces. Serving directly under each marshal are several castellans, officers who might be compared to company captains in codex-compliant chapters. Castellans typically command forces of 50 to 100 battle brothers, often specialized for particular battlefield roles. A crusade fleet might include a castellan commanding a primarily armored force, another leading a veteran close combat contingent, and a third overseeing aerial and drop operations. This specialization allows marshals to deploy precisely tailored forces for each engagement. The most honored warriors within the chapter belong to the Sword Brethren, the Black Templars equivalent to a veteran company. Unlike the first company of Codex chapters, the Sword Brethren are not consolidated under a single commander, but distributed throughout the Crusade fleets. They serve as personal champions to the marshals and castellans, lead specialized strike forces, and provide battlefield guidance to less experienced warriors. Entry into the Sword Brethren is earned through exceptional deeds rather than standard promotion, with each candidate requiring the sponsorship of an existing member and approval from a chaplain. This crusade-based organization provides the Black Templars with exceptional flexibility. When intelligence reports indicate a significant threat, the High Marshal can quickly establish a new crusade, drawing elements from existing forces and supplementing them with reserves from the Eternal Crusader or chapter keeps. Conversely, when a crusade accomplishes its primary objectives, its forces can be redistributed to other campaigns rather than remaining idle. The fluid nature of this structure makes it notoriously difficult for Imperial administrators to track the chapter's exact numbers. While officially maintaining that they adhere to the 1,000-warrior limit prescribed by the Codex Astartes, the Black Templars have operated at significantly greater strength throughout most of their history. Conservative estimates place their typical fighting force at around 5,000–6,000 battle brothers, though during periods of intense conflict, their numbers have swelled even higher. This numerical advantage is maintained through aggressive recruitment practices. Unlike Codex chapters that draw aspirants primarily from a single homeworld, the Black Templars recruit from planets across their areas of operation. When a crusade fleet establishes itself in a new system, chaplains will often visit local populations to identify potential candidates. They seek not only physical prowess, but also spiritual fervor and a predisposition toward righteous anger, qualities that align with the chapter's ethos. The Black Templars' divergence from Codex norms extends to their approach to warfare, particularly their marked preference for close combat engagements. While all Space Marines are trained in multiple forms of warfare, the Black Templars place special emphasis on blade work, hand-to-hand combat techniques, and short-range firefights. This preference is reflected in their armories, which maintain larger stocks of melee weapons than most chapters and include many ancient and revered specimens. The Power Sword represents the archetypal Black Templar weapon, symbolizing the chapter's knightly heritage and precision in combat. Many veterans wield master-crafted examples that have been passed down through generations of warriors, each bearing battle marks and modifications that tell the story of its previous wielders. A Sword Brother's Power Sword is more than a weapon. It is a physical connection to the chapter's history and a symbol of his status. Chainswords are more commonly found among the rank and file, valued for their brutal effectiveness against lightly armored opponents and psychological impact. The distinctive roar of dozens of chainswords activating in unison has become a signature sound that heralds a Black Templar charge, striking fear even into hardened enemies. The chapter's artificers have developed several unique patterns of chainsword, including the heavy-toothed Templar pattern that sacrifices some maneuverability for increased cutting power. For facing heavily armored opponents, many Black Templars turn to thunder hammers and power mauls. These weapons channel disruptive energy fields through significant mass, allowing warriors to crush ceramite armor and shatter vehicle plating. The chapter maintains an unusually high number of these weapons, particularly among assault squads designated for anti-armor operations. Their forge ships include specialized facilities for maintaining these complex weapons, with tech priests who have studied the subtle art of calibrating their energy fields for optimal performance. Combat shields frequently accompany these melee weapons, providing warriors with mobile cover as they close with the enemy. Black Templar shield designs vary widely between Crusade fleets, with some favoring large rectangular storm shields, while others prefer smaller, more maneuverable combat shields. Many bear religious iconography and inscribed oaths, transforming them from mere defensive tools into symbols of the chapter's faith. This emphasis on close combat weaponry shapes the Black Templars' tactical approach. Where other chapters might methodically reduce enemy forces through sustained ranged fire before closing for the kill, the Black Templars seek to minimize the distance phase of engagement. Their battle plans typically revolve around rapid deployment directly into enemy formations using drop pods, teleportation, or fast transport vehicles. Once in position, they rely on shock, aggression, and superior close quarters fighting skills to overwhelm opponents before supporting fire can be effectively brought to bear. This approach carries inherent risks, which the Black Templars mitigate through rigorous training and specialized equipment. Their armor often features additional reinforcement around vital areas, sacrificing some mobility for increased survivability during the vulnerable approach phase. Many warriors carry compact, high-output weapons like plasma pistols or hand flamers to clear immediate threats before drawing their melee weapons. The chapter also makes extensive use of smoke grenades, blind grenades, and other devices that disrupt enemy targeting systems, creating temporary windows of opportunity for their assault forces to close the distance. Central to maintaining both the chapter's unique organization and its combat doctrine are the chaplains, whose role within the Black Templars extends far beyond that of their counterparts in other chapters. Where Codex chaplains primarily serve as spiritual guides and keepers of tradition, Black Templar chaplains function as theological authorities, combat instructors, and enforcers of zeal. The senior-most chaplain within the chapter holds the rank of reclusiarch, traditionally stationed aboard the Eternal Crusader alongside the High Marshal. The reclusiarch oversees the spiritual direction of the entire chapter, interpreting omens, adjudicating theological disputes between Crusade fleets, and preserving the core tenets of the Black Templars' faith. He also maintains the chapter's most sacred relics, including artifacts dating back to Sigismund's time and fragments reportedly taken from the Emperor's armor during the Siege of Terra. Each Crusade fleet includes at least one master chaplain who reports directly to the Marshal while maintaining a spiritual connection to the reclusiarch. These senior chaplains supervise the instruction of neophytes, ensuring that new recruits absorb not only combat techniques, but also the chapter's religious principles. They lead the most important rituals, including the taking of oaths before battle and the consecration of new crusades. In councils of war, master chaplains remind commanders of their spiritual obligations, sometimes advocating for more aggressive action when strategic caution might otherwise prevail. Serving under these senior figures are numerous chaplains assigned to specific fighting units. These warrior priests move among the battle brothers before combat, leading them in prayers and reminding them of their oaths. During battle, they remain at the front lines, their skull-faced helmets and black armor serving as rallying points. Their litanies, broadcast through vox amplifiers, bolster morale and reinforce the religious significance of the fighting. When warriors fall, it is the chaplains who recover their gene seed and progenitor glands, ensuring the chapter's future while honoring its past. The Black Templars chaplains differ from their counterparts in other chapters in their approach to imperial truth, where many Space Marine chaplains maintain the Emperor's original teaching that he was not divine. Merely the perfect human Black Templar chaplains embrace and propagate the belief in the Emperor's godhood. They teach that the Black Templars fight not merely for humanity's survival, but for the fulfillment of divine will. This theological position occasionally creates tension with other imperial institutions, including some fellow Astartes chapters, but it provides the Black Templars with a sense of absolute purpose that sustains them through their endless crusade. Perhaps the most distinctive aspect of the Black Templars' organization is their approach to training neophytes. While Codex chapters maintain dedicated scout companies, where initiates learn battlefield skills before receiving their full implants and power armor, The Black Templars integrate their neophytes directly into active combat units through the Crusader squad system. Each neophyte is paired with a full battle brother in a mentor-student relationship reminiscent of medieval knighthood. The initiate serves as a squire to his assigned marine, maintaining his equipment, observing his combat techniques, and fighting alongside him in battle. This arrangement provides practical education under actual combat conditions while establishing personal bonds that strengthen the chapter's brotherhood. Crusader squads typically comprise 5 to 10 such pairs, allowing initiates to benefit from the experience of multiple veterans while still receiving personalized instruction. The neophytes within these squads are easily identified by their partial armor. They receive their ceramite plates piece by piece as they prove themselves worthy, with the chest plate and helmet typically being the final components granted. Until they earn full armor, they rely on carapace armor similar to that worn by Imperial Guard veterans, making them more vulnerable than their fully equipped brothers. This vulnerability is by design. The Black Templars believe that warriors who experience the full danger of combat before receiving all their enhancements will develop proper respect for both their enemies and their own limitations. Neophytes are expected to show courage without recklessness, engaging appropriate targets while recognizing when to seek support from their more capable brothers. The Black Templars' devotion to the Emperor transcends mere loyalty. Where other Space Marine chapters maintain the secular traditions of the Great Crusade era, viewing the Emperor as humanity's greatest leader, but not divine, the Black Templars have embraced his godhood with absolute conviction since their founding. This theological position predates the establishment of the ecclesiarchy by several centuries, making the chapter among the earliest organized proponents of what would eventually become the Imperial Creed. Sigismund's spiritual transformation began during the latter years of the Great Crusade, influenced by his interactions with Euphrati Keeler and other early devotees who experienced visions of the Emperor as a divine being. Though Rogel Dorn disapproved of his first captain's religious leanings, considering them contrary to the imperial truth, Sigismund's faith only deepened during the Horus Heresy. The sight of traitor Astartes corrupted by chaos convinced him that humanity needed more than rational secularism to resist the dark powers. It needed faith. When the Black Templars separated from the imperial fists during the Second Founding, they carried this conviction with them, incorporating religious elements into every aspect of their organization. Their fortress monastery ships contained grand cathedrals where battle brothers gathered for worship. Their armor bore religious iconography absent from that of their parent chapter. Even their battle cries changed, shifting from statements of loyalty to invocations of divine protection and retribution. This early veneration took forms that might seem primitive compared to the elaborate rituals of the later ecclesiarchy. The Black Templars' worship emphasized action over contemplation, sacrifice over comfort, and direct communication with the Emperor through battle meditation rather than through intermediaries. They believed and continue to believe that the Emperor's attention is drawn to those who fight in his name, that he witnesses their deeds directly and judges them accordingly. Central to the chapter's religious practice is the taking of vows. Before each battle, warriors gather in the ship's chapel or an improvised field shrine to swear oaths of moment-specific promises regarding their conduct in the coming conflict. These are not standardized recitations, but personal commitments tailored to each warrior's role and spiritual development. A battle brother might vow to be the first to breach an enemy stronghold, to protect a specific relic, to slay an enemy champion, or to test himself against a particular foe. The ritual begins with purification. Warriors fast for 24 hours before major engagements, consuming only water blessed by the chaplains. They then undergo scourging ritual flagellation that serves as both penance for past failures and preparation for coming pain. The severity of this practice varies between crusade fleets, with some limiting it to symbolic lashes, while others maintain the more intensive traditions of earlier millennia. Once purified, the battle brothers kneel before the chaplain, one by one, to speak their vows. Each warrior places his hand upon a sacred text, typically the Liber Imperialis or the chapter's own Book of Judgments, while reciting his oath. The chaplain then marks the warrior's armor with purity seals, strips of parchment bearing prayers and promises, affixed with wax impressed with the chapter's seal. These parchments contain both the warrior's personal vows and general prayers for protection and strength. These purity seals serve multiple purposes. They visibly demonstrate the battle brother's spiritual preparation, allowing commanders and chaplains to identify those who have completed their pre-battle rituals. They remind the warrior himself of the promises he has made, each seal positioned where he can see it during combat. Perhaps most importantly, they are believed to provide spiritual protection, the prayers inscribed upon them forming a barrier against corrupting influences. The chapter's artificers have developed specialized variants of purity seals for different combat situations. Seals prepared for void warfare incorporate prayers against the soul-chilling emptiness of space. Those created for battles against demons include specific wards derived from ancient texts. Campaigns against xenos warrant seals bearing prayers of purification to protect against alien contamination. A veteran battle brother's armor might bear dozens of these seals, creating a visible record of his combat history. Complementing these purity seals are devotional scripts applied directly to the armor itself. Black Templar plate is distinguished by extensive religious text inscribed across its surface, prayers, verses from sacred texts, names of honored ancestors, and personal credos. These inscriptions transform each warrior's armor into a mobile shrine, surrounding him with words of power believed to strengthen his resolve and shield his soul. The preparation of war gear extends beyond these visible elements. Black Templars perform extensive blessing rituals on their weapons before battle, particularly those intended for close combat. Power swords undergo a three-stage consecration, first cleansed with sacred oils, then exposed to incense while prayers are chanted, and finally anointed with a drop of the warrior's own blood to create a spiritual bond between weapon and wielder. This attention to spiritual preparation reflects the chapter's belief that warfare against the enemies of mankind, particularly chaos forces, occurs simultaneously on physical and metaphysical planes. A warrior whose mind and soul are properly fortified can resist corrupting influences that might otherwise exploit momentary weaknesses. The Black Templars view these rituals not as superstition, but as practical spiritual armor, as essential as their ceramite plate. The chapter's religious practices extend beyond pre-battle preparation to shape their conduct during combat itself. Black Templars constantly recite litanies and prayers as they fight, their vox channels filled with overlapping devotional phrases. These are not merely expressions of faith but tactical tools, creating a wall of sound that bolsters the warrior's resolve while disorienting enemies sensitive to psychic emanations. Against demonic foes, the combined prayers of an entire crusade force can noticeably diminish warp manifestations in the immediate vicinity. After battle comes the accounting. Warriors return to their ships' chapels to report on the fulfillment of their vows. Those who succeeded receive new purity seals marking their accomplishment. Those who failed must undergo penance proportional to the gravity of their oath and the circumstances of their failure. This might range from additional prayer vigils for minor shortcomings to extensive self-flagellation or high-risk assignments for serious failures. This cycle of vow-taking, battle, and accounting creates a continuous spiritual discipline that shapes the chapter's identity. Unlike some imperial organizations where religious observance occurs at scheduled intervals separate from regular duties, the Black Templars' faith is woven into the fabric of their everyday existence. There is no distinction between their roles as warriors and as devotees. Each aspect reinforces the other. The physical manifestations of this faith are perhaps most evident in the chapter's treatment of relics. The Black Templars maintain one of the most extensive collections of sacred artifacts in the Imperium outside the ecclesiarchy itself. These relics range from weapons and armor fragments to body parts of fallen heroes, each preserved with reverent care and deployed in battle for both practical and spiritual purposes. The most revered relics date back to the chapter's founding, particularly items associated with Sigismund himself. The original black sword, though lost during Sigismund's final battle with Abaddon, served as the template for all subsequent versions carried by Emperor's champions. Fragments of Sigismund's armor, recovered after his death, were incorporated into reliquaries that accompany major crusade fleets, allowing his spiritual presence to guide his successors thousands of years after his physical death. The chapter maintains elaborate protocols for the recovery of potential relics from the battlefield. When a distinguished warrior falls, specialized chaplain's assistants recover not only his gene seed, but also any body parts or equipment fragments that might serve as sacred objects. These are carefully cataloged, blessed, and evaluated for their spiritual significance. The most powerful become campaign relics, carried into battle to inspire the living, while others are enshrined aboard crusade ships or in chapter keeps. The Black Templars classify their relics according to a complex hierarchy based on age, association, and perceived spiritual power. Primary relics, directly connected to the chapter's founders or to particularly significant victories, are maintained aboard the Eternal Crusader under the direct supervision of the Reclusiarch. Secondary relics, typically associated with notable martials or significant crusades, are distributed among the crusade fleets, with careful records maintained of their whereabouts. Tertiary relics, including fragments of weapons or armor from distinguished but less legendary warriors, are more widely distributed, often carried by sword brethren or veteran sergeants. Among the most unusual relics are the chapter's collection of skull relics, actual skulls of fallen heroes preserved through a combination of chemical treatments and sacred oils. These are not merely displayed in shrines, but actively incorporated into battle equipment. The helm of a particularly revered marshal might be modified to include bone fragments from his skull after death, creating a direct connection between the current wearer and his predecessor. Command vehicles sometimes include skull niches, where these relics can be placed during combat operations, allowing the wisdom of the deceased to guide current commanders. The veneration of these relics reflects a fundamental belief in the persistence of the warrior spirit beyond physical death. The Black Templars hold that their fallen brothers continue to serve the Emperor in the Immaterium, and that physical remains provide an anchor point through which their influence can extend into the material realm. This belief system predates similar ecclesiarchy doctrines regarding imperial saints, representing an independent development of what would become a central tenet of the imperial creed. The relationship between the Black Templars and the Adeptus Ministorum has evolved considerably since the latter's formation in the 32nd millennium. When the ecclesiarchy first emerged as an organized imperial institution, the Black Templars viewed it with cautious interest. Here was an organization that shared their fundamental belief in the emperor's divinity, yet approached worship through ritual and hierarchy rather than through direct combat service. Initial contacts between chapter chaplains and ecclesiarchy priests were characterized by theological debate rather than immediate alliance. The Black Templars questioned the priests' emphasis on elaborate ceremony over martial action, while the priests found the chapter's independent interpretations of divine will potentially problematic. Neither side rejected the other outright, but full integration of their belief systems proved impossible due to their fundamentally different approaches to worship. Over time, a working relationship developed based on mutual respect and recognition of complementary roles. The Black Templars acknowledged the ecclesiarchy's importance in maintaining faith among the civilian population, while the ecclesiarchy recognized the chapter's unique position as divine warriors whose direct service transcended normal ecclesiastical hierarchy. By the mid-33rd millennium, it was not uncommon for Black Templar crusade fleets to include ministorum priests serving as advisors on local religious customs and as liaisons with planetary church authorities. This relationship was tested during the Age of Apostasy, when Goj Vander's corruption of the ecclesiarchy threatened the Imperium's stability. The Black Templars were among the first Space Marine chapters to recognize the threat, their independence from standard imperial command structures, allowing them to act while others hesitated. Multiple crusade fleets converged on worlds where Vander's loyalists were persecuting faithful populations, providing military support to what would eventually become Sebastian Thor's Confederation of Light. The chapter's involvement in these conflicts was not motivated by political calculation, but by genuine religious conviction. Their chaplains studied Vandire's pronouncements and found them inconsistent with their understanding of the emperor's will. This theological assessment, rather than strategic considerations, drove their decision to oppose his forces. This approach typifies the Black Templars' relationship with imperial religious institutions. They respect legitimate spiritual authority, but reserve the right to make independent judgments when they perceive deviation from true faith. In the aftermath of the Age of Apostasy, the relationship between the chapter and the Reformed ecclesiarchy strengthened. The decree passive, which prohibited the ecclesiarchy from maintaining men under arms, highlighted the unique position of the Adeptus Astartes as warriors outside direct ministorum control. The Black Templars, already operating independently while maintaining strong religious convictions, became an important example of how military might could serve the faith without threatening church governance. Modern interactions between Black Templar chaplains and ecclesiarchy priests typically occur in the context of Crusade operations. When a Crusade fleet enters a new system, local ministorum representatives are among the first imperial authorities contacted. They provide intelligence on the spiritual condition of the population, identify potential recruits with appropriate religious fervor, and help coordinate the chapter's efforts with local imperial forces. In return, the presence of Black Templar forces often reinvigorates local faith, with planetary congregations swelling after witnessing the chapter in action. Despite this cooperation, the Black Templars maintain theological independence. Their interpretation of the imperial creed emphasizes direct action over contemplation, personal combat skill over institutional hierarchy, and immediate judgment over bureaucratic process. These differences occasionally create tension with more orthodox ecclesiarchy representatives, but rarely escalate to open conflict. Both organizations recognize that they serve the same divine master, even if they understand his will in somewhat different terms. The Black Templars' visual identity is as stark and uncompromising as their combat doctrine. Their primary heraldry, black armor adorned with white crosses and devotional script, instantly distinguishes them from their Imperial Fist's progenitors and serves as both warning and promise to their enemies. This distinctive appearance has remained remarkably consistent across 10 millennia, a visual testament to the chapter's unwavering dedication to their founding principles. When Sigismund established the Black Templars during the Second Founding, his choice of colors represented a deliberate break from the Imperial Fist's yellow livery. The black armor adopted by his warriors served multiple symbolic purposes. Most immediately, it signified mourning for the emperor, grievously wounded and interred upon the Golden Throne. This somber coloration reminded each battle brother that the Imperium they fought for was fundamentally broken, its divine leader unable to directly guide humanity as intended. Beyond this expression of grief, the black armor represented the chapter's role as executioners of the emperor's judgment. In many human cultures, black has traditionally been associated with death and finality, fitting symbolism for warriors dedicated to delivering the emperor's justice to his enemies. The color's practical benefits in void warfare and night operations, allowing warriors to approach targets with minimal visual signature, aligned perfectly with the chapter's preference for shock assaults. The white Maltese cross that adorns Black Templar shoulder pauldrons, vehicles, and banners draws from ancient Terran military orders that fought religious wars during Old Earth's medieval period. This 8-pointed symbol represents the 8 virtues the chapter holds sacred: loyalty, piety, courage, honor, faith, strength, judgment, and wrath. The stark contrast between the white cross and black background creates a visual impact visible even in the chaos of battle, allowing battle brothers to quickly identify allies and serving as a rallying point during complex engagements. The precise placement of this cross varies according to a complex system of heraldic rules maintained by the chapter's marshals and chaplains. Standard battle brothers typically display the cross on their left shoulder pauldron, with the right reserved for squad or crusade markings. Veterans among the Sword Brethren often bear the cross on both shoulders, signifying their elite status. The High Marshal's armor traditionally features a larger cross extending across the chest plate, marking him as the embodiment of the chapter's ideals. The chapter symbol itself, a black Maltese cross on a white background, often encircled by devotional script, appears on banners, vehicles, and occasionally on specialized armor components. This inverted color scheme distinguishes official chapter iconography from the personal heraldry of individual warriors. When displayed on campaign banners, this symbol is frequently augmented with gold edging and sacred seals, transforming it from mere identification into a sacred standard that inspires nearby battle brothers to greater feats of valor. Complementing these core symbols is an extensive vocabulary of secondary markings that communicate a warrior's status, achievements, and battlefield role. Perhaps most distinctive are the red crosses worn by the Sword Brethren and the Emperor's Champion. This crimson variation on the chapter's standard white cross symbolizes both the blood shed in the Emperor's service and the heightened responsibility these elite warriors bear. The red cross typically appears on tabards, shoulder pauldrons, or knee plates, positioned to be visible from multiple angles during combat. The Emperor's Champion, a position unique to the Black Templars, bears additional distinctive heraldry. Beyond the red cross, this honored warrior wears artificer armor extensively modified with devotional iconography, including sacred texts inscribed directly into the ceramite and golden aquillas positioned at key points. The armor's helmet features a distinctive laurel wreath motif, marking the wearer as victorious even before battle commences, a visual declaration of faith in the Emperor's support. This specialized heraldry serves practical purposes beyond symbolism. In the confusion of close-quarters combat, distinctive markings allow warriors to instantly identify command figures and specialized combat roles. The red crosses of the Sword Brethren, visible even through smoke and debris, direct less experienced battle brothers toward these veteran fighters for guidance. Similarly, the Emperor's Champion's distinctive appearance ensures that all nearby warriors can locate and follow this inspirational figure during crucial engagements. Individual Crusade fleets within the chapter maintain their own heraldic traditions that complement these universal elements. These variations typically appear on the right shoulder pauldron, where warriors display markings indicating their specific Crusade allegiance. The Eternal Crusade, the chapter's original and most prestigious campaign, uses a simple sword icon on a black field. The Dorn Crusade incorporates elements of the Imperial Fist's heraldry to honor the chapter's primogenitor. The Neovera Crusade employs a stylized flame motif, representing their focus on purging heretic worlds through cleansing fire. These Crusade markings evolve over time, incorporating elements that commemorate significant victories or honor fallen leaders. When Marshal Ludildus fell during the cleansing of the Ghoul Stars, his crusade added a broken chain to their heraldry, symbolizing both his sacrifice and the liberation of human worlds he achieved. Similarly, after the successful defense of Helsreach, the Grimaldus Crusade incorporated Hive Spire imagery into their iconography, creating a visual record of this pivotal engagement. The right to bear these Crusade markings must be earned through direct participation in the campaign. When warriors transfer between Crusade fleets, a relatively common practice as the chapter redistributes its strength according to strategic needs, they must remove previous Crusade insignia and adopt those of their new command. Senior veterans who have served in multiple major campaigns are sometimes granted the privilege of retaining elements from previous assignments, creating compound heraldry that records their extensive service history. Beyond these standardized elements, individual Black Templars personalize their armor with campaign badges, small heraldic devices that commemorate participation in specific engagements. Unlike the Crusade markings that indicate organizational affiliation, these badges record personal history. They typically appear on lower leg plates, belt accessories, or occasionally on specialized equipment like combat shields or weapon casings. The design of these campaign badges follows historical precedent established during the Great Crusade era. Each major engagement receives a unique symbol designed by the Crusade's chaplains and artificers, incorporating elements that represent the campaign's nature and objectives. A badge commemorating void warfare might include stellar imagery. One marking the defeat of orc forces typically incorporates broken axe motifs. Badges for campaigns against chaos often feature purifying flame symbols. Warriors earn the right to display these badges through direct participation in the relevant campaigns, with additional embellishments granted for exceptional service. A standard badge might be rendered in silver, while warriors who performed heroically receive gold versions. Those who suffered serious wounds can mark their sacrifice by edging the badge in red. Battle brothers who participated in the campaign's decisive engagement may add a laurel wreath surrounding the basic design. Over a long service career, a veteran might accumulate dozens of these badges, creating a visual record of his contributions to the chapter's endless crusade. Rather than displaying all badges simultaneously, which would be impractical given their number, most warriors rotate which ones they wear according to the nature of their current assignment. When facing a recurring enemy, they prominently display badges from previous successful campaigns against similar foes, both to intimidate their opponents and to demonstrate relevant experience to their battle brothers. The chapter's armorers maintain extensive records of these campaign badges, preserving templates and design specifications even for ancient campaigns. This allows them to produce replacement badges when originals are damaged and to create new versions for warriors joining ongoing campaigns. Some of the most significant historical badges have been in continuous production for thousands of years, with subtle variations indicating the generation in which they were awarded. Personal heraldry among veterans represents another layer of the chapter's visual language. While standard battle brothers maintain relatively uniform appearances, sword brethren and officers are permitted, indeed expected, to distinguish themselves through individualized elements. These typically include unique helmet designs, specialized shoulder pauldron embellishments, or distinctive weapon decorations that reflect the warrior's combat specialization and spiritual focus. The tradition of personal heraldry reaches its apex among the chapter's marshals, each of whom develops a unique visual identity that becomes associated with their leadership style and battle record. Marshal Helbrecht's distinctive winged helmet and gold embellished armor components instantly identify him across crowded battlefields. Similarly, Chaplain Grimaldus's skull-faced helm, adorned with additional bone elements and parchment scriptures, creates an unmistakable silhouette that both inspires allies and intimidates enemies. These personalized elements must conform to strict guidelines maintained by the chapter's chaplains, who ensure that individual expression remains within acceptable theological boundaries. Imagery must reflect approved devotional themes, with explicit references to imperial saints, angelic figures from ancient Terran religions, or symbolic representations of the emperor's aspects. Warriors are prohibited from incorporating xenos-influenced designs or imagery that might inadvertently reference chaos symbolism, with chaplains conducting regular inspections to enforce these restrictions. The evolution of Black Templar iconography through the millennia reveals subtle shifts in emphasis while maintaining remarkable continuity in core elements. During the chapter's early centuries, their heraldry featured more direct references to their imperial fists heritage, with occasional yellow components complementing the dominant black and white scheme. As they established their independent identity, these references gradually diminished, though never disappeared entirely. Small imperial fist symbols sometimes appear on veterans' honor badges or ceremonial equipment. The 32nd millennium saw increased incorporation of skull imagery, coinciding with the rise of the imperial cult and its emphasis on martyrdom. Black Templar armor from this period often featured stylized human skulls representing both the mortality of the warrior and the immortality of his service. This trend intensified during the Nova Terra Interregnum, when the chapter fought extensively against separatist forces and emphasized their role as loyal executioners of imperial will. Following the Age of Apostasy, the chapter's iconography incorporated more explicit religious elements, including additional scriptural passages inscribed directly onto armor surfaces and increased use of purity seals. This period also saw the introduction of red cloth components, tabards, loincloths, and shoulder drapes that complemented the existing black and white scheme while adding visual references to the blood shed in the emperor's name. The modern era has witnessed a synthesis of these historical elements, with different crusade fleets drawing on various aspects of the chapter's heraldic tradition. Some maintain the austere black and white scheme with minimal embellishment, emphasizing the chapter's ancient origins. Others incorporate extensive scriptural elements and religious iconography, reflecting the intensified faith of the late 41st millennium. This diversity within Unity characterizes the chapter's current visual identity, recognizably Black Templar regardless of specific Crusade affiliation, yet with distinct variations that reflect each force's particular history and focus. Regional variations within Crusade fleets have developed naturally as forces operate in different sectors for extended periods. Black Templars crusading near the Eye of Terror often incorporate additional protective wards into their heraldry, including specialized hexagrammic designs developed in conjunction with Ordo Malleus Inquisitors. Those operating in the Eastern Fringe frequently adopt more prominent Aquila imagery to emphasize imperial authority when dealing with isolated human worlds and xenos threatened colonies. The practical application of Black Templar heraldry extends beyond armor to encompass vehicles, spacecraft, and strongholds. The chapter's tanks and transports maintain the black base color of their infantry armor, with white crosses positioned on turrets, hull sides, and front glacis plates. Additional Crusade markings typically appear on side panels, while campaign badges and kill markings often adorn the vehicle's rear sections or less prominent surfaces. The chapter's strike cruisers and battle barges follow similar heraldic principles on a larger scale. Their black hulls bear massive white crosses visible at void combat ranges, often illuminated by powerful external lights during combat approaches. The vessel's prows frequently incorporate sculptural elements representing imperial saints or allegorical figures from chapter mythology, while weapon emplacements bear consecration markings visible only at close range. Chapter keeps the fortress monasteries maintained on various worlds throughout imperial space display the most elaborate expressions of Black Templar heraldry. These structures combine military functionality with religious symbolism, their architecture incorporating cross-shaped floor plans, skull motifs in decorative elements, and extensive use of black and white stone in their construction. The keep's central chapels feature massive, stained armor-glass windows depicting famous chapter victories, with specialized lighting systems ensuring these images remain visible even during defensive operations. The Black Templars' distinctive heraldry serves as more than mere decoration. It functions as a visual expression of their core identity, instantly communicating their nature as warriors of faith to both allies and enemies. The stark contrast of black and white represents their uncompromising worldview, while the Crusader imagery connects them to ancient Terran traditions of holy warfare. In a galaxy where appearances often reveal deeper truths, the Black Templars present themselves exactly as they are: implacable, devoted, and eternally committed to their founding purpose. The Declate's Crusade stands as one of the most harrowing campaigns in Black Templar history, undertaken in the 36th millennium against a Forge world fallen to the corrupting influence of chaos. Declate's Prime had once been a jewel of the Adeptus Mechanicus, its vast manufactorums producing everything from Leman Russ battle tanks to specialized void shields for Imperial battleships. When astropathic communications from the system suddenly ceased, the Mechanicus initially suspected nothing more than warp disturbances affecting transmission. 3 standard years of silence passed before an automated merchant vessel returned from the Declate system. Its hull was scorched with strange symbols, and its cargo holds contained not the expected munitions, but instead bizarre mechanical constructs that seemed to blend flesh and metal in ways that violated both Imperial technology protocols and natural law. When tech priests attempted to access the vessel's logs, they triggered a scrap code virus that nearly overwhelmed the defense systems of Port Sanctus. The Adeptus Mechanicus, recognizing the implications, immediately quarantined all information regarding Declate's Prime and petitioned the Inquisition for intervention. Inquisitor Hezekiah Carmelus of the Ordo Hereticus assembled a strike force including elements from the Sisters of Battle, Imperial Navy, and a small contingent of Grey Knights. Their initial reconnaissance mission confirmed the worst fears. Declate's Prime had fallen to the ruinous powers, specifically to the corrupting influence of the Dark Mechanicum. High Marshal Bohemond received the Inquisition's request for assistance while his fleet was resupplying at the fortress world of Bacca. The timing proved fortuitous. The Black Templars had just concluded a successful campaign against Dark Eldar raiders in the neighboring sector and had nearly their full strength available. Bohemond committed 5 Crusade fleets to the Declate's Crusade, assembling one of the largest Black Templar forces seen since the 32nd millennium. The initial void engagement above Declate's Prime revealed the extent of the corruption. The Forge world's defense monitors had been transformed into grotesque amalgams of machine and flesh, their weapons modified to fire not only conventional munitions, but also warp-infused energy that could penetrate void shields through dimensional bleeding. 3 Black Templar strike cruisers were lost in the first hour of battle before the chapter's fleet adapted its tactics, using short-range warp jumps to confuse the targeting systems of the corrupted vessels. Marshal Gerhardt led the first ground assault, deploying with 400 battle brothers via drop pod into what had once been the Forge world's primary administrative district. The Black Templars found a landscape transformed beyond recognition. The once orderly streets had been reshaped into spiral patterns that hurt the eye to follow. Buildings had been partially melted and reformed into towers that resembled skeletal hands reaching toward the polluted sky. Worst of all, the population had not been killed, but transformed. Former human workers now stumbled through the twisted cityscape with mechanical components erupting from their flesh. The fighting in the administrative district lasted 17 days without pause. The Black Templars discovered that conventional tactics proved ineffective against the corrupted Forge world defenders. The enemy fought without concern for self-preservation, and seemingly fatal wounds often resulted in spontaneous mutations that rendered the target even more dangerous. Chaplain Grimwald adapted the chapter's approach, instructing his warriors to focus on complete destruction of enemy forms. Heads were to be separated from bodies, limbs severed, and torsos split open to ensure no regeneration could occur. While Marshal Gerhardt's forces secured a foothold, Marshal Theoderich led a second landing force targeting the Forge world's primary plasma reactor complex. This facility had been transformed into a massive ritual site, with the reactor's containment chamber repurposed as a warp portal. Thousands of former tech priests had been arranged in concentric circles around the chamber, their bodies fused together into a living calculation engine that maintained the stability of the portal. The Black Templars' attack on the reactor complex coincided with a ritual cycle reaching its apex. As Theoderich's forces fought through the outer defenses, the portal within the containment chamber pulsed with increasing intensity. Sword Brethren Adelard, leading the vanguard, reported glimpsing something massive attempting to push through from the other side, a demon engine of unprecedented scale. Recognizing the imminent catastrophe, Theoderich ordered an immediate assault on the inner sanctum regardless of casualties. The battle for the reactor core became legendary within the chapter. 3 successive waves of Black Templars fought their way to the containment chamber, each group reduced to barely a squad's strength by the time they reached their objective. The third wave, led by Theoderich himself, managed to breach the final defenses just as the portal reached critical stability. The Marshal directed his remaining warriors to attack the living calculation engine, while he personally led a strike team into the containment chamber. What transpired within that chamber remains sealed in inquisitorial records, but the external effects were witnessed by Imperial forces throughout the system. A column of warp energy erupted from the Forge world's surface, visible even from neighboring planets. The entire reactor complex imploded, creating a crater 15 kilometers wide. When reconnaissance craft finally managed to approach the site 2 days later, they found the warp portal closed and Marshal Theoderich's broken body at the crater's center, his armor fused with the remains of what appeared to be a mechanical greater demon. The destruction of the primary portal broke the coordination of the corrupted Forge world defenders, but the campaign was far from over. For another 3 months, the Black Templars methodically cleansed Declate's Prime, sector by sector. The final phase involved the demolition of the entire Forge complex using cyclonic torpedoes, a rare authorization granted personally by the Fabricator General of Mars, who declared that the technological corruption had spread too deeply for any part of the Forge to be salvaged. The Declate's Crusade established several tactical precedents that the Black Templars would apply in future campaigns against chaos, corrupted Forge worlds. The chapter developed specialized equipment for dealing with corrupted machine spirits, including null field generators that could temporarily disrupt the connection between possessed machines and their warp entities. They also formalized protocols for identifying and targeting the nexus points of large-scale corruption, prioritizing these over conventional strategic objectives. A century after the purging of Declate's Prime, the Black Templars faced a threat of an entirely different nature in the distant reaches of the galaxy. The Vinculus Crusade began in the year 567 of the 36th millennium, when long-range augur arrays detected a massive orc migration emerging from the Ghoul Stars, a region notorious for strange phenomena and deadly xenos species. Initial Imperial Navy reconnaissance confirmed the worst. A full-scale WOG had formed under the leadership of a particularly cunning orc warlord known as Grimtusk, the Planet Breaker. The Ghoul Stars region had always presented unique challenges for Imperial forces. Its distance from major supply lines, combined with unusual stellar phenomena that disrupted warp travel, made sustained military operations difficult. Several previous attempts to establish permanent Imperial presence in the region had ended in disaster, with entire colonization fleets disappearing without trace. The approaching Orc WOG threatened not only these tenuous Imperial holdings, but also the more established worlds along the eastern fringe. High Marshal Lazarus, recognizing both the threat and the opportunity, declared the Vinculus Crusade with an unusual directive, not merely to defeat the Orc forces, but to establish permanent Black Templar presence in the Ghoul Stars region. This decision reflected the chapter's increasing strategic independence, while other Astartes chapters typically coordinated their deployments with broader Imperial military planning. The Black Templars had developed a practice of identifying and addressing threats based on their own intelligence networks. The initial phase of the Vinculus Crusade involved establishing forward bases in the path of the approaching WOG. Marshal Constantine led this effort, selecting 3 marginally habitable worlds and constructing fortified chapter keeps on each. These keeps were designed not as permanent installations, but as staging areas, each capable of supporting up to 300 battle brothers with associated equipment and vessels. Their placement created a triangular zone of control that the Orc forces would need to pass through to reach more densely populated Imperial space. The first engagement came at the frontier world of Nemesis Tessera, where an Orc vanguard fleet attempted to establish a beachhead. Marshal Constantine had anticipated this move and positioned 2 strike cruisers in the system's outer reaches, hidden within the debris field of a shattered moon. When the Orc vessels committed to low orbit, the Black Templars executed a pincer movement, catching the greenskin ships between their cruisers and ground-based defense batteries. The resulting void battle lasted less than 6 hours and ended with the complete destruction of the Orc vanguard. This initial victory proved deceptive. The main body of Grimtusk's WOG arrived 3 weeks later, a fleet 3 times larger than Imperial intelligence had estimated. Rather than approaching from a single vector, the Orcs split their forces into 5 separate battle groups, each targeting a different system. This strategy, unusually sophisticated for greenskins, suggested that Grimtusk possessed tactical acumen beyond the norm for his species. Marshal Constantine was forced to divide his forces to meet these multiple threats, a decision that went against conventional Astartes doctrine but reflected the Black Templars' flexibility. He assigned veteran Castellan Dorn to defend Nemesis Tessera with 200 battle brothers, while he personally led a rapid response force that would use a series of calculated warp jumps to reinforce whichever system faced the greatest pressure. The next 3 months saw some of the most mobile warfare in the chapter's history. The Black Templars avoided set-piece battles where the Orcs' numerical advantage would prove decisive, instead employing hit-and-run tactics to disrupt landing operations and destroy key assets. Thunderhawk gunships struck Orc fuel depots and ammunition stores, while Sword Brethren led teleport assaults against command vessels. These operations inflicted disproportionate damage on the WOG, while preserving the chapter's limited manpower. The turning point came when Imperial augurs detected Grimtusk's personal battle barge entering the Vinculus system. This massive vessel, cobbled together from the remains of several Imperial capital ships, served as both the warlord's mobile fortress and the psychological linchpin of his WOG. Marshal Constantine recognized the opportunity and concentrated all available forces for an assault on this critical target. The boarding action against Grimtusk's vessel became legendary within the chapter. 120 Black Templars, led by Constantine himself, teleported directly onto the Orc flagship's bridge level. They found themselves in a nightmarish environment where the original Imperial architecture had been modified with crude Orc engineering, creating a labyrinthine battleground of narrow corridors and suddenly opening chambers. The teleport insertion scattered the assault force more widely than intended, forcing small groups of battle brothers to fight their way through hordes of greenskins toward the central command area. Marshal Constantine and his command squad were the first to reach Grimtusk's throne room, a vast chamber dominated by a crude throne fashioned from the command throne of an Imperial battleship. The Orc warlord proved to be a monster even by the standards of his kind, standing nearly 4 meters tall and clad in armor salvaged from a Night Titan. The duel between Constantine and Grimtusk lasted nearly 20 minutes, with the Marshal finally prevailing by exploiting a weakness in the Orc's salvaged armor where two different systems had been imperfectly joined. The death of Grimtusk did not immediately end the WOG, but it removed the strategic coordination that had made it exceptionally dangerous. Over the following year, the Black Templars systematically isolated and destroyed the remaining Orc battle groups. Rather than attempting to cleanse every world touched by the Greenskins, an impossible task given their limited numbers, they focused on destroying the largest concentrations of Orcs and their leadership figures. This approach ensured that while Orc presence remained in the region, it would take centuries for another WOG of similar scale to form. The Vinculus Crusade concluded with the establishment of a permanent chapter keep on the world of Vinculus Prime, a harsh but strategically located planet near the edge of the Ghoul stars. This installation, larger and more heavily fortified than the temporary bases constructed earlier in the campaign, served as both a monitoring station for future Orc activity and a recruitment center drawing aspirants from the frontier worlds. The keep's construction represented a significant investment of resources, indicating the chapter's long-term commitment to the region. The Gerula's Crusade of the 428th year of the 38th millennium presented the Black Templars with a different kind of enemy, one that hid among loyal Imperial citizens rather than attacking openly. The Gerula system, comprising 7 inhabited worlds in the Segmentum Pacificus, had been a stable and productive part of the Imperium for millennia. Its primary exports included agricultural products from the fertile world of Gerula's II and rare minerals from the asteroid belts surrounding the system's outer planets. Nothing in its history suggested it would become the site of one of the most extensive genestealer infestations ever recorded. The first indication of problems came not through military channels, but through routine administratum census data. Population growth rates on several Gerula's worlds had increased significantly over a single generation, exceeding projections by nearly 15%. Simultaneously, productivity reports showed declining efficiency in key mining operations despite increased workforce numbers. These statistical anomalies might have been dismissed as administrative errors if not for the attention of Inquisitor Kryptman, who recognized patterns consistent with genestealer infiltration. Initial investigation confirmed Kryptman's suspicions. The infestation had begun approximately 80 years earlier when a mining vessel returned from operations in a neighboring system. Unbeknownst to its crew, the ship had been boarded during a routine stop at a deep void refueling station, with several crew members infected by genestealer organisms. By the time Kryptman identified the problem, the cult had spread to all 7 worlds of the Gerula system, with particularly strong presence in the governmental structures of Gerula's 4, the system's administrative center. The Inquisitor's initial purge attempts using local Arbites and Imperial Guard forces failed catastrophically. The cult had embedded itself too deeply in planetary defense forces, allowing it to turn these purge operations into opportunities to eliminate loyalist elements within the military. Recognizing that the situation required Astartes' intervention, Kryptman sent astropathic requests to several nearby chapters. The Black Templars, with a Crusade fleet passing within 30 light-years of the system, were the first to respond. Marshal Riquimont, commanding the Sword of Judgment Crusade, diverted his entire force to the Gerulus system, 400 battle brothers with supporting vehicles and aircraft. Rather than announcing their arrival, the Black Templars used the system's extensive asteroid fields to mask their approach, establishing a forward base on an uninhabited moon of Gerulus 5. From this position, they conducted detailed auger scans of all 7 worlds, building a comprehensive picture of the infestation's extent. The results proved sobering. Genestealer cult activity registered on every inhabited world, with infection rates ranging from 5% of the population on outlying agricultural colonies to nearly 30% on Gerulus 4. Most concerning, the cult had achieved near-complete control of the system's orbital defense networks and communications infrastructure. Any direct assault would face not only the hybrid cultists themselves, but also the formidable defensive systems meant to protect the system from external threats. Marshal Riquimont developed a strategy that played to the Black Templars' strengths while accounting for the unique challenges of fighting genestealers. Rather than attempting simultaneous operations across all 7 worlds, which would have spread his forces too thinly, he decided to target the cult leadership on Gerulus 4 first. By decapitating the command structure, he hoped to disrupt coordination between cult elements on different worlds, allowing them to be isolated and eliminated one by one. The assault on Gerulus 4 began with a precision strike against the planet's main communications array. A squad of veteran sword brethren, led by the Emperor's champion brother Tancred, deployed via teleportation directly into the facility's central control chamber. They faced immediate resistance from both human hybrid cultists and several full genestealers serving as bodyguards for the facility director, himself a 3rd-generation hybrid. Despite the ferocity of the enemy, the Black Templars secured the facility within 20 minutes, allowing their tech marines to implement a specialized Vox filter that would prevent the cult from coordinating its forces. With the communications network compromised, Marshal Riquimont launched the main assault on the planetary capital. 300 Black Templars descended in Thunderhawk gunships, targeting government buildings, defense installations, and suspected cult gathering places simultaneously. The fighting was brutal and complex, with cultists often indistinguishable from loyal citizens until they attacked. The chapter's chaplains proved invaluable in this environment, their enhanced senses allowing them to detect subtle signs of genestealer infection that even other Astartes might miss. The battle for the capital lasted 17 days, with the Black Templars methodically clearing district after district. They employed specialized tactics developed through previous encounters with genestealer cults. Buildings were secured from the top down to prevent enemies from escaping through upper levels. Flamers and melta-weapons were used extensively to ensure no organisms survived to infect others, and all casualties, both enemy and civilian, were cremated immediately to prevent the spread of genestealer genetic material. As the operation on Gerulus 4 progressed, Inquisitor Kryptman established screening protocols for the civilian population. Those showing no signs of infection were evacuated to designated safe zones, where ecclesiarchy priests provided spiritual support, while medici teams conducted more thorough examinations. Those with confirmed infection were granted the Emperor's peace, a necessity that weighed heavily on even the hardened Black Templars, particularly when confronted with children showing early-stage mutations. The Age of Apostasy marked one of the darkest periods in imperial history, as the ecclesiarchy under High Lord Goj Vander descended into corruption and tyranny. The Black Templars' response to this crisis, the Crusade of Wrath, demonstrated both their independence from standard imperial command structures and their unwavering commitment to their interpretation of the Emperor's will, even when it placed them in opposition to nominal imperial authorities. The The seeds of the conflict were planted in the year 200 of the 36th millennium, when Vander, already master of the administratum, arranged his appointment as ecclesiarch as well, consolidating unprecedented power in his hands. Initially, many imperial institutions accepted this concentration of authority as necessary during a period of external threats and internal instability. The Black Templars, however, viewed the development with immediate suspicion. Their chaplains studied Vander's pronouncements carefully, noting discrepancies between his words and traditional interpretations of the imperial creed. High Marshal Sigismund ordered increased vigilance throughout all Crusade fleets, instructing his marshals to report any signs of corruption or abuse of power by ecclesiarchy representatives. These reports soon painted a disturbing picture. Vander was using the Frateris Templar, the ecclesiarchy's military arm, to eliminate political opponents, impose crippling tithes on already struggling worlds, and enforce theological interpretations that centered worship on himself rather than the emperor. The breaking point came when Vander declared several Space Marine chapters excommunicate traitors for refusing to submit to ecclesiarchy authority, a power he had no legitimate right to exercise. Marshal Constantine, commanding the Storm of Retribution crusade in the Segmentum Solar, witnessed the aftermath of Vander's purges on the shrine world of Dimemmer. The planet's cardinal had questioned Vander's interpretations of certain sacred texts and subsequently been executed along with his entire staff. Frateris Templar forces had then conducted mass punishments of the civilian population, killing thousands to cleanse the taint of heresy. Constantine's report to High Marshal Sigismund was unambiguous. Vander had betrayed the emperor's trust and was using imperial institutions to serve his own ambition. After consulting with his senior chaplains and marshals, Sigismund declared the Crusade of Wrath, formally withdrawing the Black Templars from obedience to Vander's corrupt regime while maintaining their absolute loyalty to the emperor himself. This distinction proved crucial. Unlike some who opposed Vander, the Black Templars never questioned the legitimacy of the ecclesiarchy or the imperial creed, only Vander's perversion of these institutions. Their opposition was not to imperial authority itself, but to its corruption by a single power-hungry individual. This theological precision allowed them to maintain their identity as loyal servants of the emperor, even while fighting against forces that nominally represented his will. The final battle of High Marshal Sigismund remains one of the most storied confrontations in imperial history. As the 31st millennium drew to a close, the Imperium faced its first organized assault from the forces that had retreated to the Eye of Terror 2 centuries earlier. Abaddon the Despoiler, once first captain of the Luna Wolves and now War Master of Chaos, emerged from the warp leading a coalition of traitor legions, renegade imperial forces, and demonic entities that would later be known as the First Black Crusade. Imperial defense systems along the Cadian Gate detected the approaching Chaos fleet too late to mount a coordinated response. Isolated battle groups engaged the invaders piecemeal, only to be overwhelmed by the concentrated might of Abaddon's forces. As news of these defeats reached Terra, High Marshal Sigismund made a fateful decision. Though the Black Templars had Crusade fleets operating throughout the galaxy, he gathered only his personal guard, 100 veteran sword brethren aboard the battle barge Eternal Crusader, and set course for the Cadian sector. Many questioned this decision, arguing that Sigismund should have waited to assemble a larger force. The High Marshal, however, understood something his critics did not. Time was more valuable than numbers in this conflict. His centuries of experience fighting the traitor legions had taught him that momentum was critical to chaos operations. If Abaddon could be delayed, even at great cost, the broader imperial response would have time to mobilize. The Eternal Crusader intercepted the Chaos fleet near the dying world of Kasser Jair. Sigismund employed a daring strategy, using the planet's degrading orbit as cover to approach the enemy flagship, the monstrous battleship Vengeful Spirit. While the battle barge's guns engaged the Chaos vessel's escorts, Sigismund led a boarding action directly against Abaddon's command ship. The teleport assault inserted Sigismund and 40 sword brethren into the Vengeful Spirit's lower decks. fighting their way upward through corrupted crew members, mutants, and Chaos Space Marines from multiple legions. The Black Templars suffered heavy casualties but maintained their advance. Sigismund fought with the same cold precision that had made him legendary during the Siege of Terra, each stroke of his blade ending an enemy's life with mathematical certainty. As the boarding party neared the ship's command deck, they encountered increasingly elite opposition. Veterans of the Black Legion, Abaddon's inner circle, formed a defensive perimeter around their master. The Black Templars' numbers had dwindled to less than 20 by the time they breached this final defense, but Sigismund remained uninjured, his armor bearing the marks of dozens of deflected blows, but his movement unimpaired. The confrontation between Sigismund and Abaddon took place in a vaulted chamber that had once been the vengeful spirit's stratagem. The despoiler had transformed this space into a shrine to the Chaos Gods, with the ruined remains of imperial iconography providing a stark backdrop to newly erected altars. Abaddon himself had changed dramatically from the proud first Captain Sigismund had known during the Great Crusade. His armor had been modified with trophy racks bearing the skulls of loyalist champions, and the demonic sword Drachnian pulsed with malevolent energy in his grip. What followed was not merely combat, but a clash of symbols, the Emperor's champion of old facing the new Warmaster of Chaos. Witnesses among both the Black Templars and Black Legion describe a duel of unprecedented intensity. Though Sigismund was by then over 1,000 years old, his movements showed no sign of deterioration. If anything, his centuries of continuous warfare had refined his swordsmanship beyond what it had been during the Heresy. For nearly an hour, the two champions fought while their followers continued the broader battle throughout the ship. Sigismund landed dozens of wounds on his opponent, his black blade finding gaps in Abaddon's Terminator plate that no ordinary warrior could have exploited. Yet the despoiler, empowered by the ruinous powers, showed inhuman resilience. Wounds that would have killed even an Astartes closed almost as quickly as they were inflicted. The end came not through any failure of skill, but through the inevitable mathematics of attrition. Sigismund, for all his mastery, remained mortal. As the duel extended, his reactions slowed by microseconds, imperceptible to a human observer, but sufficient for a warrior of Abaddon's caliber to exploit. The despoiler's counterattack drove Drachnian through Sigismund's armor at the joint between chest and abdomen, the demonic weapon bypassing ceramite to sever his spine. Even mortally wounded, Sigismund managed a final strike that carved a deep furrow across Abaddon's face, a scar the despoiler would bear for millennia afterward. As life ebbed from the High Marshal, he spoke words that were recorded by the Vox pickup in his helmet and later recovered when his body was returned to the Imperium. "You will die as your weakling father died, soulless, honorless, weeping, ashamed." Abaddon's rage at these words led him to impale Sigismund's body on the prow of the Eternal Crusader before allowing the crippled vessel to flee. This act, intended as desecration, instead ensured that the High Marshal's remains would be recovered and properly honored. More importantly, the delay caused by the battle with Sigismund disrupted the Chaos Fleet's timetable, allowing Imperial reinforcements to reach the Cadian Gate and halt the First Black Crusade before it could penetrate deeper into Imperial space. The recovery of Sigismund's body became a pivotal moment for the Black Templars. His successor, High Marshal Bohemond, declared that the chapter would honor their founder through deeds rather than words. Each subsequent High Marshal has renewed this commitment, ensuring that Sigismund's legacy continues to shape the chapter's identity even after 10,000 years. 4 millennia after Sigismund's final battle, the Black Templars found themselves led by another exceptional figure whose influence on the chapter would prove nearly as profound. High Marshal Ludildus took command in the middle of the 36th millennium, a period of relative stability following the Age of Apostasy. Where many chapter masters might have used this respite to consolidate forces and rebuild, Ludildus recognized an opportunity to expand the Black Templars' reach and refine their practices. Ludildus came to prominence as a castellan during the Declate's Crusade, where his methodical approach to clearing corrupted forge complexes earned him recognition from the then High Marshal. Unlike some of his more impulsive battle brothers, Ludildus combined religious fervor with strategic patience, willing to spend months planning an operation that would be executed in hours. This temperament made him ideally suited to address the organizational challenges facing the chapter after centuries of continuous crusading. Upon assuming the mantle of High Marshal, Ludoldus undertook a comprehensive review of the chapter's crusade fleets, personally visiting each major force over a period of 5 years. What he found concerned him. While individual fleets maintained exceptional combat readiness, coordination between them had deteriorated. Crusades operated in isolation, sometimes duplicating efforts or missing opportunities to combine forces against significant threats. Ludoldus established what came to be known as the Codex Templar, not a replacement for the Codex Astartes, but a supplementary document addressing the specific needs of a perpetually crusading chapter. This text formalized command structures between crusade fleets, established protocols for resource allocation, and created a standardized system for prioritizing targets. Most importantly, it instituted regular conclaves where marshals would gather to share intelligence and coordinate future operations. The first such gathering, the Conclave of Wrath, took place aboard the Eternal Crusader in the year 567 of the 36th millennium. 12 marshals attended, representing crusade fleets from across the Imperium. Over 21 days, they harmonized their strategic objectives and redistributed forces to address the most pressing threats. This practice, continued by all subsequent High Marshals, has become a defining feature of Black Templar operations, ensuring that the chapter's dispersed forces function as a coherent whole rather than isolated fragments. Beyond these organizational reforms, Ludoldus made his mark through personal leadership in several significant campaigns. The purging of the Denorian sector stands as perhaps his greatest achievement, a systematic cleansing of 17 systems that had fallen under the influence of the renegade Cardinal Bucharus. Over 8 years, Ludoldus led his forces through each system, coordinating with loyal Imperial Guard elements and Adepta Sororitas convents to eliminate the Cardinal's supporters while minimizing civilian casualties. The campaign's culmination came at the Shrine World of Gathalammer, where Bucharus had established his headquarters in a corrupted cathedral complex. Rather than employing the Black Templars' traditional shock assault tactics, Ludoldus implemented a phased operation that isolated the shrine from its supporting infrastructure before tightening the noose. By the time his forces breached the cathedral walls, Bucharus's defenders were starved of ammunition and supplies, allowing the Black Templars to capture the Cardinal alive for public execution. This victory earned Ludoldus significant political capital within the Imperium, which he leveraged to secure concessions benefiting the chapter. He negotiated expanded recruitment rights in several sectors, obtained priority access to newly discovered STC fragments related to weapons technology, and established formal alliance protocols with several Forge worlds that continue to supply the Black Templars with specialized equipment. Ludoldus also refined the chapter's religious practices, working with his Reclusiarch to codify the rituals that had developed organically over the previous millennia. He formalized the process for selecting Emperor's champions, established the rites of initiation still used to induct neophytes, and expanded the chapter's liturgical texts to include new prayers and battle hymns. These spiritual innovations strengthened the Black Templars' identity as warrior monks while ensuring consistency across widely dispersed crusade fleets. Perhaps most significantly, Ludoldus established the tradition of the Vow of Moment, a formal oath taken by battle brothers before significant engagements. While the practice of swearing oaths before battle dated back to Sigismund's time, Ludoldus systematized the process, creating specific categories of vows appropriate to different combat situations and ranks. This framework provided spiritual focus for individual warriors, while giving commanders a tool to direct their troops' zeal toward specific objectives. Ludoldus's tenure as High Marshal lasted nearly 2 centuries, ending when he fell in battle against Dark Eldar raiders in the Ghoul Stars region. His body was recovered and interred aboard the Eternal Crusader, but his influence lived on through the traditions and structures he established. Every subsequent High Marshal has operated within the framework Ludoldus created, adapting his systems to new challenges while maintaining their essential character. In the late 41st millennium, the Black Templars found themselves led by a worthy successor to both Sigismund and Ludoldus. High Marshal Helbrecht assumed command in the year 989 of the 41st millennium, just as the Imperium entered one of the most tumultuous periods in its history. Where Ludoldus had been a builder and organizer, Helbrecht emerged as a warrior diplomat whose personal combat prowess was matched by his ability to forge alliances with other imperial factions. Helbrecht's rise through the ranks came during the Vinculus Crusade, where he served as a sword brother under Marshal Riquimont. His opportunity for distinction arrived when an Orc kill ship ambushed the Crusade fleet's supply convoy. Helbrecht led a boarding action against the massive vessel, fighting through 12 decks of greenskin defenders to reach the engine compartment. Rather than destroying the engines, he reconfigured them to overload in a specific sequence, turning the kill ship into a guided missile that destroyed 3 other Orc vessels before detonating. This combination of tactical creativity and personal courage earned him rapid promotion, first to Castellan and then to Marshal when Riquimont fell in battle against Eldar Corsairs. As Marshal, Helbrecht distinguished himself in campaigns against various xenos threats, developing particular expertise in combating Orcs and Tyranids, enemies whose overwhelming numbers required specialized tactics to counter. Helbrecht's most significant test came shortly after his elevation to High Marshal, when the Second War for Armageddon erupted. The Orc warlord Gozkul Thraka led a massive wog against this vital hive world, overwhelming many of its defenses before Imperial reinforcements could arrive. The Black Templars, responding to astropathic distress calls, were among the first Astartes forces to reach the besieged planet. Helbrecht deployed his forces strategically, focusing on Armageddon's equatorial regions where the fighting was most intense. He personally led the defense of Hive and Furnace, coordinating with Steel Legion armored companies to create kill zones that channeled the Orc hordes into pre-sighted artillery fields. When Gozkul's personal guard, the Bully Boys, breached the Hive's outer defenses, Helbrecht and his command squad engaged them directly, allowing civilian evacuation to continue through the lower levels. The confrontation between Helbrecht and Gozkul himself occurred 3 weeks into the siege. The Orc warlord, seeking to break Imperial morale, led a massed assault against the Hive's primary generatorium complex. Helbrecht, recognizing the attack's significance, intercepted Gozkul's advance force in the maintenance tunnels leading to the complex. The ensuing battle saw Helbrecht wound the Orc leader with his relic blade, the sword of the High Marshals, only to have Gozkul's power claw sever his right hand in return. Despite this injury, Helbrecht continued fighting, switching his sword to his left hand and maintaining his position until reinforcements arrived. This stubborn defense prevented Gozkul from capturing the generatorium, which would have plunged the Hive into darkness and disabled its remaining defensive systems. Though the Orc warlord escaped, the damage inflicted on his forces contributed to the eventual Imperial victory. Helbrecht's wound, which he refused to have fully healed as a reminder of his failure to slay Gozkul, became symbolic of his leadership style, determined, adaptable, and willing to bear personal cost for strategic advantage. He replaced his lost hand with a bionic augmentation that improved his strength, but deliberately left visible scarring as a mark of his oath to eventually destroy the Orc warlord. This personal vendetta against Gozkul has shaped many of Helbrecht's decisions as High Marshal. When the Third War for Armageddon began 50 years later, he immediately committed significant Black Templar forces to the conflict, including elements from 5 different Crusade fleets. His forces played crucial roles in multiple theaters, but Helbrecht focused particular attention on operations that might lead to Gozkul himself. The most significant of these opportunities came during the war's 3rd year, when intelligence indicated Gozkul was personally leading an assault on the Fire Wastes region. Helbrecht diverted his command force to intercept, engaging the Orc warlord's convoy in the ash deserts outside Hive Tempestora. The resulting battle, fought amid geothermal vents and lava channels, saw Helbrecht wound Gozkul severely before Orc reinforcements forced the Black Templars to withdraw. While the Third War for Armageddon eventually reached a stalemate, Helbrecht's leadership established the Black Templars as one of the conflict's decisive factors. Their ability to rapidly redeploy between threatened zones prevented several hive cities from falling, while their expertise in close-quarters combat proved invaluable in reclaiming sections of hives that had been overrun. Among those who served under Helbrecht during the Armageddon conflicts, none gained greater renown than Chaplain Grimaldus. Originally assigned as a junior chaplain to the Hellsreach Crusade, Grimaldus found himself elevated to Reclusiarch after his predecessor fell during the initial Orc landings. This battlefield promotion thrust him into a leadership role for which he had not been prepared, testing both his tactical acumen and spiritual resolve. Grimaldus's defense of Hellsreach Hive became legendary even while it was occurring. When Marshal Amalrich was killed leading a counterattack against Orc siege engines, command of all Black Templar forces in the Hive fell to Grimaldus. Rather than consolidating his limited forces in the upper Hive, as strategic doctrine might have dictated, he dispersed them to key defensive points throughout all levels, including the Underhive regions typically abandoned during invasions. The Black Templars approach war not merely as a tactical necessity, but as a sacred duty, and this philosophy extends to every aspect of their arsenal. Their weapons and wargear are not simply tools of destruction, but holy instruments through which the Emperor's judgment is delivered. Each bolt round fired, each swing of a power sword, represents an act of devotion as much as a military action. At the core of the Black Templars' arsenal lies their profound reverence for artificer-crafted equipment. While all Space Marine chapters maintain skilled artificers, the Black Templars have elevated this craft to an art form infused with religious significance. Their master artificers hold positions of great respect within the chapter, second only to chaplains in spiritual matters relating to wargear. These specialists combine traditional Adeptus Mechanicus techniques with the chapter's unique combat requirements and devotional practices. The artificers maintain workshops aboard each Crusade vessel, spaces that function as both forges and shrines. Weapons and armor components hang from the ceilings and walls, interspersed with religious icons and parchments bearing prayers of consecration. The air is heavy with incense mixed with the scents of sacred oils and molten metal. Here, battle brothers bring their equipment for blessing and repair, often remaining to pray while the work is performed. This reverence for craftsmanship is most evident among the Sword Brethren, whose status grants them access to the finest equipment the chapter can provide. Each Sword Brother typically wears a suit of artificer armor, standard Adeptus Astartes power armor that has been extensively modified and enhanced through centuries of incremental improvements. These suits often incorporate components dating back thousands of years, carefully preserved and integrated into newer frames. The pauldrons of Sword Brethren Artificer armor feature distinctive reinforcement patterns that not only provide additional protection, but also serve as canvases for intricate devotional iconography. The chest plates often incorporate reliquary compartments containing sacred objects, splinters of bone from chapter heroes, fragments of weapons that slew notorious enemies, or parchment scraps bearing oaths written in the warrior's own blood. These relics are believed to provide both spiritual protection and combat inspiration. Helm designs among the Sword Brethren show particular diversity, with many veterans modifying their helmets to reflect personal combat doctrines or to honor fallen mentors. Some feature reinforced faceplates with additional armor around the eye lenses, providing protection against headshots at the cost of slightly reduced peripheral vision. Others incorporate enhanced Vox projectors that amplify battle prayers to intimidating volumes. Many Sword Brethren maintain multiple helmets for different combat situations, selecting the appropriate one as part of their pre-battle rituals. The weapons carried by these elite warriors receive equally meticulous attention. Power swords are particularly favored, with many Sword Brethren wielding blades that have been passed down through generations of warriors. These weapons develop distinct personalities over centuries of use, their power fields calibrated to increasingly precise specifications by successive wielders. Some ancient examples can slice through ceramite armor with barely any resistance, their molecular disruption fields honed to near-perfect efficiency. Chain weapons also feature prominently in the Sword Brethren arsenal, though these differ significantly from standard Astartes patterns. Black Templar artificers have developed specialized teeth configurations for their chainswords that sacrifice some raw cutting power for improved performance against armored targets. The distinctive sound of these modified weapons, a deeper, more resonant growl than standard patterns, has become associated with the chapter's elite, causing even hardened enemies to hesitate when they hear it echoing through confined spaces. For ranged combat, many Sword Brethren favor plasma weapons, despite their notorious instability. The chapter's artificers have developed specialized cooling systems that reduce the risk of catastrophic overheating, allowing for more aggressive use of maximum power settings. These modifications come at the cost of increased weight and complexity, but the Sword Brethren consider this a worthy trade-off for the weapon's ability to defeat heavy armor at medium ranges. The most distinguished Sword Brethren often wield relic weapons recovered from ancient battlefields or inherited from legendary predecessors. These include master-crafted bolt weapons with specialized ammunition feeds, power axes incorporating disruption field generators from the dark age of technology, and digital weapons, finger-mounted energy projectors capable of firing a single devastating close-range shot. Such relics are not personal property but conditional grants, with each bearer expected to add to the weapon's legacy before passing it to a worthy successor. While the Sword Brethren enjoy access to the finest equipment, the chapter's regular battle brothers are not neglected. Black Templar Crusade fleets maintain some of the most extensive mobile armories in the Adeptus Astartes, with dedicated forge ships accompanying major forces. These vessels house not only repair facilities, but also production capabilities for ammunition, replacement components, and even complete weapons. This self-sufficiency allows Crusade fleets to operate independently for decades without requiring major resupply from Forge worlds. The chapter places particular emphasis on close combat weapons for all its warriors, reflecting their preference for direct engagement. Even tactical squads, primarily designed for ranged fire support in Codex-compliant chapters, typically include several members equipped with melee weapons beyond the standard combat knife. This approach sacrifices some firepower concentration, but ensures that every squad can function effectively if forced into close quarters. Across all ranks, Black Templar warriors maintain their equipment with ritualistic precision. Daily cleaning routines incorporate prayers and anointments with sacred oils, transforming mundane maintenance into acts of devotion. Before major engagements, weapons undergo additional blessings, with purity seals applied to critical components. These practices serve practical purposes beyond their spiritual significance. Black Templar equipment typically functions reliably even in the most adverse conditions, a testament to the thoroughness of their maintenance protocols. The pinnacle of the Black Templars' arsenal, however, is reserved for a single warrior in each Crusade fleet, the Emperor's Champion. When a battle brother experiences visions of the Emperor before a major engagement, he is brought before the fleet's senior chaplain for verification of his experience. If confirmed as genuine, he is granted access to artifacts of immense spiritual and martial power, the Black Sword and the Armor of Faith. The Black Sword represents the ultimate expression of the chapter's bladesmithing traditions. Significantly larger than standard power swords, it requires the enhanced strength of power armor to wield effectively. The blade incorporates a disruption field generator of extraordinary potency, capable of cleaving through the heaviest armor and even damaging the protective fields of vehicles. The weapon's hilt contains micro-reliquaries housing fragments of weapons wielded by previous champions, creating a physical connection to the chapter's martial lineage. The sword's most distinctive feature is its color, a black so deep it seems to absorb light rather than reflect it. This effect results from a specialized treatment of the blade's molecular structure, combined with thousands of years of ritual anointment, with oils containing trace amounts of materials from Terra itself. When activated, the power field manifests as a barely visible shimmer around the blade, occasionally flaring with white energy when striking enemy targets. Each Crusade fleet maintains its own black sword, crafted according to ancient templates, but with subtle variations reflecting local traditions. These weapons are not identical copies, but spiritual siblings, each with its own combat history and peculiarities. Some are optimized for sweeping attacks against multiple opponents, while others are calibrated for precision strikes against heavily armored targets. All share the common purpose of seeking out and destroying the enemy's champions, a direct continuation of Sigismund's role during the Siege of Terra. Complementing the Black Sword is the Armor of Faith, a suit of artificer armor extensively modified for both practical combat advantages and symbolic significance. The armor's ceramite plates are inscribed with thousands of microscopic prayers, visible only under magnification, but believed to create a continuous field of spiritual protection. The helmet incorporates an augmented autosenses suite that helps identify enemy champions amid the chaos of battle, while the backpack power unit includes additional capacity to support the energy requirements of the Black Sword. Most distinctive are the armor's shoulder pauldrons, which extend further than standard designs and bear intricate iconography depicting the Emperor's victory over Horus. These enlarged components provide additional protection for the champion's arms during the sweeping strikes favored by Black Sword wielders. The chest plate typically incorporates a reliquary containing soil from Terra, a physical reminder of what the champion fights to protect. The process of fitting the Armor of Faith to a newly chosen champion is itself a sacred ritual. The chapter's artificers work without rest, modifying the suit to match the recipient's exact proportions and combat style. Senior chaplains bless each component before installation, while battle brothers who previously wore the armor attend to share their experiences and insights. The entire procedure typically requires 24 hours, during which the chosen warrior fasts and meditates on his visions. Once armed and armored, the Emperor's champion takes a final, binding oath to seek out and destroy the mightiest enemies on the battlefield. This commitment is absolute. Champions have been known to fight through seemingly fatal wounds, their bodies sustained by faith alone until their duty is complete. In the rare cases where a champion survives a major engagement, he typically returns the sacred wargear and resumes his previous role, though forever marked by the experience. Beyond individual equipment, the Black Templars maintain an extensive arsenal of vehicles modified to support their aggressive combat doctrine. Most emblematic of these are their Land Raider Crusaders, variants of the standard Land Raider design optimized for assault transportation and close quarters engagement. The chapter was instrumental in developing this pattern during the late 36th millennium, working with Martian tech priests to create a vehicle specifically suited to their preferred tactics. The Crusader variant sacrifices the lascannon sponsons of the standard Land Raider in favor of Hurricane bolters, multi-barreled weapons capable of saturating target areas with explosive bolt rounds. This change reflects the vehicle's primary purpose of clearing landing zones for the troops it carries. Additional modifications include the installation of frag assault launchers above the front ramp, which fire explosive charges immediately before disembarkation to disorient enemies and create cover. Most significantly, the Crusader pattern increases transport capacity by reorganizing internal systems, allowing it to carry more warriors into battle than standard Land Raiders. The chapter typically uses this additional space to transport Sword Brethren strike teams or Crusader squads with attached chaplains, elite formations capable of exploiting the shock effect of the vehicle's arrival. The interior includes dedicated mounting points for close combat weapons and prayer stations, where warriors can make final devotions before combat. Black Templar Land Raider Crusaders are instantly recognizable by their extensive external modifications. Most feature additional armor plating inscribed with prayers and oaths, particularly around vulnerable points like vision blocks and weapon mounts. Many bear large icons of the chapter mounted on their turrets, while others display enemy trophies, orc heads, tyrannid talons, or heretic banners, as testaments to previous victories. The front glacis plate often features a stylized representation of the Emperor, serving both as inspiration to the chapter's warriors and as a psychological weapon against enemies who fear his judgment. The chapter's tank crews approach their duties with the same religious fervor as their infantry counterparts. They perform blessing rituals before starting their vehicle's engines, anoint track links with sacred oils, and maintain shrines within their crew compartments. Many crews develop intensely personal relationships with their vehicles, addressing them as named individuals and attributing to them distinct personalities and preferences. This practice, while occasionally raising eyebrows among more orthodox Mechanicus representatives, results in exceptional maintenance standards and remarkable performance even from ancient vehicles. While Land Raider Crusaders represent the chapter's most iconic vehicles, their arsenals include numerous other specialized transports and support platforms. Rhino and Razorback transports often undergo field modifications to incorporate additional close combat weapons for their passengers or improved frontal armor for ramming maneuvers. Predator tanks frequently mount additional storm bolters or heavy flamers to complement their main guns, allowing them to clear infantry from around their primary targets. The chapter also maintains significant numbers of dreadnoughts, though their approach to these walking sarcophagi differs somewhat from Codex norms. Black Templar dreadnoughts are expected to continue the crusading spirit that animated them in life, taking offensive roles rather than serving as defensive anchors. Many are equipped with two close combat arms, a configuration that limits ranged capabilities but maximizes effectiveness in the melee engagements the chapter prefers. These venerable warriors often lead assault formations, using their massive strength to breach enemy fortifications and create entry points for following infantry. Among the most sacred items in the Black Templars' arsenal are the relics maintained by the chapter's Reclusiarch aboard the Eternal Crusader. These artifacts, some dating back to the Great Crusade itself, are deployed only in the most significant engagements and under the direct supervision of senior chaplains. Their presence on a battlefield is considered a clear statement of the chapter's commitment to victory regardless of cost. The Sword of the High Marshals stands foremost among these relics, a master-crafted power sword that has served as the badge of office for every High Marshal since Sigismund. The weapon's blade bears microscopic inscriptions naming each of its bearers and their most significant victories, creating a continuous physical record of the chapter's leadership. Its power field generator, maintained by the finest artificers in the chapter, produces an energy sheath of exceptional stability and penetrating power. Current High Marshal Helbrecht has modified his fighting style to accommodate this weapon's particular characteristics. Where his natural inclination favors aggressive, sweeping attacks, the sword responds better to precise thrusts and controlled cuts. This adaptation demonstrates the relationship between Black Templar leaders and their wargear. The warrior adjusts to the weapon as much as the weapon is configured for the warrior, creating a partnership rather than a simple user-tool dynamic. Equally revered are the fragments of Rogel Dorn's armor, ceramite shards recovered from the Primarch's wargear after his disappearance during the First Black Crusade. These pieces, barely larger than coins, are mounted in reliquaries of gold and adamantium, each inscribed with prayers honoring the chapter's Gene Father. Before particularly challenging engagements, senior officers may be granted permission to carry one of these reliquaries into battle, drawing inspiration from this direct connection to their primogenitor. The chapter maintains strict protocols regarding these fragments, with each reliquary's location tracked at all times. When not deployed in battle, they reside in a specially constructed vault aboard the Eternal Crusader, guarded by veteran sword brethren who have taken vows of silence to focus their minds entirely on their protective duty. The vault itself incorporates multiple layers of physical and psychic security, including systems that would destroy the relics rather than allow them to fall into enemy hands. The Bones of Mordred represent another category of sacred relics, actual remains of fallen heroes preserved through specialized techniques and incorporated into new wargear. These bone fragments, typically taken from particularly revered chaplains or emperor's champions, are set into weapon hilts, embedded in armor joints, or mounted in command vehicle control panels. Their presence serves as a reminder that a Black Templar's service continues even after death, with their physical remains providing both inspiration and perceived spiritual protection to their successors. The relationship between the Black Templars and their progenitor chapter, the Imperial Fists, remains one of profound respect tinged with theological tension. Though both chapters venerate Rogel Dorn and share the same gene seed, their divergent paths, since the Second Founding, have created subtle but significant differences in doctrine, practice, and worldview. At the most fundamental level, the Imperial Fists maintain the secular approach established during the Great Crusade, viewing the Emperor as humanity's greatest leader, but not as a divine being. This perspective stands in stark contrast to the Black Templars' fervent belief in the Emperor's godhood. When battle brothers from the two chapters serve together, this theological divide manifests in numerous small ways, from the Black Templars' habit of beginning operations with prayer rituals to the Imperial Fist's more pragmatic approach to battlefield preparation. Despite these differences, the bond of shared lineage remains powerful. Both chapters participate in the Feast of Blades, a tournament held every century where Imperial Fist's successor chapters send champions to compete in ritual combat. The event serves multiple purposes: honing combat skills, identifying exceptional warriors, and maintaining connections between the fragmented remnants of Dorn's Legion. Black Templar champions have claimed victory in the feast on numerous occasions, most notably in 945, when Sword Brother Adelard defeated all challengers despite suffering a serious wound in his second bout. The tournament typically concludes with a war council, where representatives from participating chapters share intelligence about threats facing the Imperium. During these sessions, the Black Templars' vast network of Crusade fleets often provides information from distant regions that might otherwise escape notice. This practical contribution helps balance occasional friction arising from theological discussions, reminding all present that the chapters serve the same ultimate purpose despite their different approaches. Beyond formal gatherings like the Feast of Blades, cooperation between the Black Templars and Imperial Fists occurs most frequently during major campaigns threatening core Imperial worlds. The Third War for Armageddon saw substantial forces from both chapters deployed to the beleaguered Hive world, with the Imperial Fists focusing on defensive operations, while the Black Templars conducted aggressive counterattacks against Orc formations. This natural division of responsibilities played to each chapter's strengths while minimizing doctrinal conflicts. Relations with other Imperial Fist successors vary considerably depending on each chapter's particular traditions and history. The Black Templars maintain especially close ties with the Crimson Fists, whose more balanced approach to the Codex Astartes and moderate religious practices position them as something of a middle ground between the Black Templars and their progenitor chapter. Joint operations between these two chapters occur with relative frequency, particularly against Orc threats, where the Crimson Fist's extensive experience proves valuable. The Excoriators chapter shares the Black Templars' preference for aggressive engagement with the enemy, though without the religious overtones. Their similar tactical doctrines facilitate smooth battlefield cooperation, with each chapter respecting the other's combat prowess while maintaining separate command structures. Several notable campaigns in the Segmentum Obscurus have featured Black Templar assault forces creating breaches that Excoriator tactical squads then exploited, demonstrating effective coordination despite limited joint training. More complex is the relationship with the Soul Drinkers, whose tragic fall and subsequent redemption created a cautionary tale that resonates deeply with the Black Templars. Though the Soul Drinkers were ultimately absolved of heresy, their history of mutation and conflict with imperial authorities makes the Black Templars wary of close association. When circumstances force cooperation, Black Templar chaplains typically maintain constant vigilance, watching for any signs of corruption or deviance from imperial doctrine. Among non-Dorn successors, the Black Templars find natural allies in chapters that share their religious fervor or preference for close combat. The Red Hunters, with their close ties to the Inquisition and dedication to purging heresy, frequently operate alongside Black Templar forces in campaigns against Chaos cultists and renegade imperial officials. Their complementary approaches, the Red Hunters' clinical precision balancing the Black Templars' righteous fury, have proven effective in numerous purification operations. The Flesh Terrors, despite their concerning battle rage and occasionally questionable control, earn respect from the Black Templars for their combat prowess and unwavering commitment to engaging the enemy directly. When the two chapters find themselves operating in the same theater, their respective chaplains typically establish clear boundaries to prevent misunderstandings, with each force assigned distinct objectives that minimize the need for moment-to-moment coordination. More problematic are relations with chapters that emphasize psychic warfare or maintain large librarious departments. The White Scar's integration of Stormseer traditions into their combat doctrine creates friction when they operate alongside the Black Templars, whose suspicion of psykers can impede tactical coordination. Similarly, the Bloodraven's scholarly approach and extensive use of librarians in battlefield roles often conflicts with Black Templar preferences, necessitating careful mission planning to avoid direct conflicts in operational approach. The tension between the Black Templars and the Adeptus Mechanicus stems from fundamentally different interpretations of humanity's relationship with technology and the divine. Where the Mechanicus venerates the machine god and views technology through a quasi-religious lens of ritual and tradition, the Black Templars see machines as tools granted by the Emperor for mankind's use in his service. This philosophical divide manifests in numerous practical conflicts when the two organizations must work together. At its core, the disagreement centers on the question of technological autonomy. The Mechanicus approaches technology as a semi-divine force requiring propitiation and respect, with machine spirits treated as entities deserving worship in their own right. The Black Templars, by contrast, view technology as subordinate to human will, specifically, to the will of those who serve the Emperor directly. This fundamental difference creates friction even during routine interactions, such as equipment maintenance or ammunition resupply. The conflict first emerged during the early Crusades of the 31st millennium, when Black Templar forces requisitioned supplies from Forge worlds near their areas of operation. Mechanicus representatives objected to the chapter's practice of modifying standard equipment without proper rituals or technical oversight. The Black Templars, focused on combat effectiveness rather than doctrinal purity, dismissed these concerns as irrelevant to their mission. This pattern of interaction, practical demands met with ritual objections, followed by impatient dismissal, established a template that would repeat across thousands of worlds over the following millennia. Matters came to a head during the Moria Schism of the 35th millennium, when a coalition of conservative tech priests attempted to standardize all Adeptus Astartes equipment according to strict Mechanicus templates. The Black Templars, along with several other chapters, refused to surrender their armories for realignment, leading to a tense standoff that nearly escalated to open conflict. The intervention of inquisitorial authorities eventually resolved the immediate crisis, but the underlying tensions remained unaddressed. In the modern era, relations between the Black Templars and Mechanicus vary considerably depending on the specific Forge world and Crusade fleet involved. Some pragmatic tech priests recognize the chapter's combat record and accommodate their needs with minimal friction, focusing on results rather than procedural orthodoxy. Others maintain a rigid adherence to Mechanicus protocols, providing exactly what is requested but nothing more, and registering formal protests when the chapter modifies equipment beyond authorized parameters. These tensions become particularly acute regarding the maintenance of the chapter's fleet. The massive battle barges and strike cruisers that serve as mobile fortress monasteries require extensive technical support that only the Mechanicus can provide. Yet the Black Templars insist on maintaining control over certain systems, particularly targeting arrays, life support, and internal security networks. This divided authority creates inevitable conflicts, with tech priests objecting to unauthorized modifications, while Black Templar tech marines defend their right to adapt vessels to the chapter's specific needs. Despite these ongoing tensions, necessity forces cooperation. The Black Templars require the Mechanicus production capacity and technical expertise to sustain their eternal crusade, while the Mechanicus benefits from the chapter's willingness to defend Forge worlds against external threats. This mutual dependence has prevented the relationship from deteriorating into outright hostility, instead maintaining a state of professional tension managed through carefully negotiated agreements and tacit understandings. The Black Templars' attitude toward psykers represents one of their most distinctive characteristics, setting them apart not only from many other Space Marine chapters, but from imperial military doctrine more broadly. Their deep suspicion of warp-based powers stems from both theological convictions and practical concerns about corruption, creating a complex position that has evolved somewhat over the chapter's long history. At its foundation, the Black Templars' anti-psyker stance reflects their interpretation of the Emperor's will. They believe that psychic powers represent a dangerous shortcut, abilities accessed without the discipline and sacrifice required by conventional combat training. More concerning still is the source of these powers, the warp itself, home to the very entities that oppose the Emperor's vision for humanity. Using such abilities, even with proper training and safeguards, creates an inherent connection to this corrupting realm. This theological position manifested most visibly in the chapter's refusal to maintain a librarius for much of their history. While Codex-compliant chapters cultivated and trained battle psykers, the Black Templars rejected this practice entirely, preferring to rely on faith, firepower, and blade work rather than warp manipulation. When faced with enemy psykers, they developed specialized tactics focusing on rapid elimination rather than psychic countermeasures, typically deploying dedicated hunter squads equipped with null field generators and sanctified ammunition. The chapter's position began to shift subtly in the mid-36th millennium, following a series of devastating encounters with demonic entities in the Ghoul Stars region. These conflicts demonstrated the practical limitations of a force without psychic defenses, as Black Templar Crusade fleets suffered disproportionate casualties against warp-empowered enemies. High Marshal Ludildus, ever the pragmatist, recognized that doctrinal purity could not justify needless sacrifice of his warriors. The resulting compromise maintained the chapter's theological objections to psychic powers while acknowledging their tactical utility in specific circumstances. Rather than establishing a full librarius, the Black Templars began to reluctantly accept a small number of battle brothers who manifested psychic abilities during their training or service. These individuals, carefully monitored by chaplains, were permitted to use their powers exclusively for defensive purposes and counter-psychic operations. This limited acceptance came with strict conditions. Psychically gifted battle brothers were required to undergo additional spiritual training beyond that expected of their brothers, including extended periods of isolation, fasting, and meditation supervised by senior chaplains. They were prohibited from using their abilities except in direct response to enemy psychic attacks or when specifically authorized by a chaplain or marshal. Most significantly, they were expected to view their powers as a burden rather than a gift, a dangerous tool to be employed only when absolutely necessary. The chapter's ambivalence toward these battle brothers manifests in numerous small ways. They rarely rise to leadership positions despite their combat effectiveness, as many Black Templars remain uncomfortable taking orders from those with warp connections. They typically maintain separate quarters aboard Crusade vessels, ostensibly for meditation, but effectively creating physical segregation from their brothers. During pre-battle rituals, they undergo additional purification ceremonies not required of non-psychic warriors. This compromised position has created internal tensions that persist into the present era. Conservative elements within the chapter, particularly among older chaplains, continue to advocate for a return to the pure rejection of psychic powers that characterized the chapter's early millennia. More pragmatic voices, often found among frontline marshals who have witnessed the practical value of psychic defenses, argue for fuller integration of these abilities into the chapter's combat doctrine. The reality on the ground typically depends on the specific Crusade fleet and its leadership. Some fleets maintain strict limitations on psychic activity, deploying their gifted battle brothers only in the most desperate circumstances. Others have developed more integrated approaches, incorporating defensive psychic operations into their standard tactical repertoire, while maintaining theological distinctions between these sanctioned activities and the corrupted practices of enemy psykers. This internal debate reflects broader tensions within imperial society regarding the use of psychic powers. The Black Templars' evolving position, rejection softening into reluctant, limited acceptance, mirrors similar shifts throughout the Imperium as the practical necessity of psychic abilities becomes increasingly apparent in the face of growing warp disturbances and demonic incursions. In stark contrast to their uneasy relationship with psykers stands the Black Templars' productive alliance with the Adepta Sororitas, particularly the Order's militant. These two organizations, despite their different origins and structures, share fundamental values that facilitate cooperation across numerous battlefields and campaigns. Their theological alignment, combined with complementary combat doctrines, has created one of the most effective recurring partnerships in Imperial military operations. The foundation of this alliance lies in shared faith. Both organizations embrace the Emperor's divinity without reservation, viewing combat as a form of worship and victory as confirmation of divine favor. When Black Templars and Sisters of Battle fight together, they do so with a common spiritual framework that transcends their organizational differences. Joint prayer services before battle are common, with chaplains and priests leading their respective forces in complementary rituals that strengthen bonds of brotherhood and sisterhood in faith. This theological alignment extends to their view of the enemy. Both groups approach heretics, xenos, and the witch breed with uncompromising hostility, seeing these foes not merely as military threats but as affronts to the divine order. Neither organization is inclined toward mercy when confronting the Emperor's enemies, creating a shared operational philosophy that minimizes friction regarding treatment of prisoners or civilian populations in contested areas. Beyond these spiritual commonalities, practical factors contribute to effective coordination. The Sisters of Battle, while formidable, lack the physical enhancements of Astartes, creating natural role differentiation on the battlefield. Black Templars typically form the spearhead of joint operations, using their superior strength and resilience to break enemy formations and create breaches. Sisters of Battle forces then exploit these openings, their numbers and firepower allowing them to secure objectives and hold territory that the more mobile Space Marines have cleared. This pattern of cooperation has proven particularly effective against entrenched chaos cults and heretical uprisings. The Black Templars' shock assault capabilities quickly neutralize the most dangerous enemy assets, demon engines, sorcerers, and heavy weapons emplacements, while the Sisters' ability to deploy in greater numbers enables them to process civilian populations, identifying and eliminating hidden cultists while separating innocent bystanders for evacuation or re-education. Notable examples of this partnership include the Thurian Crusade, where Marshal Amalrich's forces fought alongside the Order of the Ebon Chalice to cleanse a cluster of shrine worlds corrupted by the Alpha Legion. The campaign lasted nearly a decade, with Black Templar assault teams and Sororitas purification squads methodically working through each world's population centers. Their complementary approaches, the Black Templars focusing on military targets while the Sisters handled the more complex task of civilian screening, allowed for more efficient operations than either force could have managed alone. More recently, the defense of the San Lear system against a Nurgle-inspired plague cult demonstrated the effectiveness of integrated command structures. Rather than maintaining strictly separate hierarchies, Marshal Demetrius and Canoness Ophelia established a joint war council that coordinated all aspects of the campaign. This arrangement allowed for rapid resource reallocation as the situation evolved, with Black Templar reinforcements quickly deployed to sectors where Sisters' forces encountered unexpected resistance, and Sororita's medical teams providing support for civilian populations in areas secured by Astartes operations. The alliance extends beyond battlefield coordination to include intelligence sharing, joint training exercises, and even occasional equipment exchange. Black Templar artificers have adapted certain Sororitas' weapons designs, particularly their flame-based weapons, while Sisters' armories have incorporated elements of Astartes' close combat techniques into their melee weapons. Some Crusade fleets maintain dedicated liaison officers who specialize in coordinating with Sororitas' forces, ensuring smooth communication and minimizing misunderstandings when the two groups operate together. This relationship, while not without occasional tensions, represents a model for cooperation between different imperial organizations. By focusing on their shared faith and complementary capabilities rather than organizational differences, the Black Templars and Adeptus Sororitas have developed an alliance that strengthens both groups while better serving the Imperium they both revere. As threats to humanity continue to multiply across the galaxy, such partnerships become increasingly vital to Imperial survival. The Wars for Armageddon stand as testament to the Black Templars' enduring commitment to humanity's defense, with the chapter playing crucial roles in all three major conflicts that have engulfed the vital Hive world. During the First War for Armageddon in the year 444 of the 41st millennium, a force of 400 Black Templars under Marshal Ludav arrived alongside Grey Knight's elements to combat the demonic incursion led by Angron, Primarch of the World Eaters. The Black Templars secured the civilian evacuation corridors in Hive Infernus, while the Grey Knights confronted the Demon Primarch directly, an arrangement that suited both forces' specialized capabilities. It was during the Second War in 941, however, that the Black Templars made their most significant contribution to Armageddon's defense. High Marshal Helbrecht himself led the chapter's response, deploying nearly 900 battle brothers across multiple Hive cities threatened by Gozkul Thraka's massive wog. Unlike some Imperial forces that concentrated on defensive operations, the Black Templars executed aggressive counterattacks designed to disrupt Orc supply lines and eliminate key warbosses. The fighting in Hive Hellsreach became particularly emblematic of the chapter's approach. When Orc forces breached the Hive's outer defenses, Chaplain Grimaldus, newly promoted to Reclusiarch after his predecessor's death, found himself commanding all Black Templar assets in the city. Rather than retreating to more defensible positions in the upper Hive, Grimaldus distributed his forces to key strategic locations, including the Temple of the Emperor Ascendant, whose massive statue served as both a spiritual rallying point and a critical artillery observation position. For 18 days, Grimaldus and his forces held these positions against overwhelming odds. When the temple finally collapsed under sustained bombardment, the chaplain emerged from the rubble-carrying relics rescued from the shrine, earning him the title Hero of Hellsreach among the Hive's defenders. This symbolic act, preserving the physical manifestations of faith even as the building itself fell, epitomized the Black Templars' priorities and inspired the civilian militia to continue fighting despite deteriorating conditions. Elsewhere in the Hive, Dreadnought Tancred anchored the defense of Manufactorum Tempestora, a facility producing Chimera transports vital to the Imperial Guard's mobility. Leading a force of just 30 battle brothers, Tancred held the facility's main gates against repeated Orc assaults, his ancient frame absorbing damage that would have destroyed a conventional vehicle. When Estampa breached the outer perimeter, Tancred engaged it directly, grappling with the massive Orc construct long enough for supporting Predator tanks to target its vulnerable reactor housing. The Third War for Armageddon in 998 saw the Black Templars return in even greater numbers, with elements from 5 Crusade fleets converging on the embattled world. High Marshal Helbrecht again took personal command, driven partly by his ongoing vendetta against Gozkul after their inconclusive duel during the previous conflict. The chapter deployed primarily to the Fire Wastes and Ash Wastes regions, environments whose harsh conditions played to the Astartes' physiological advantages over conventional troops. In the Fire Wastes, Marshal Rickard's forces pioneered the use of rapid strike tactics against Orc supply convoys, employing land speeder squadrons to identify targets before deploying assault squads via drop pod. These operations significantly hampered the Greenskins' ability to maintain momentum in the region, forcing warbosses to divert fighting units to protect their logistics. When Gozkul himself arrived to stabilize the situation, Helbrecht launched a direct assault on the warlord's position, leading to a running battle across the volcanic plains that ultimately proved inconclusive when Orc reinforcements forced the Black Templars to withdraw. The Armageddon conflicts demonstrated the chapter's ability to integrate with broader Imperial defense strategies while maintaining their distinctive combat doctrine. Their preference for close engagement complemented the Imperial Guard's ranged firepower, while their mobility allowed them to reinforce threatened sectors more rapidly than conventional forces. Perhaps most importantly, their visible presence, black armored warriors fighting with religious fervor, provided a significant morale boost to civilian defenders who might otherwise have surrendered to despair. The destruction of the Hive World Solemnus by elements of Hive Fleet Leviathan in 997 triggered one of the most extensive Black Templar operations of recent decades, the Crusade of Rage. Solemnus had been a significant recruitment world for the chapter for over 3 millennia, providing generations of aspirants renowned for their stoicism and combat aptitude. Its loss represented not merely a strategic setback, but a direct assault on the chapter's future. Marshal Amendora, whose Crusade fleet had been operating in a neighboring sector, received the distress calls from Solemnus, but arrived too late to prevent its consumption by the tyrannid organisms. Finding only a dead world stripped of all biomass, Amendora transmitted a request for reinforcement that quickly received response from 3 other Crusade fleets. Within 6 months, the combined force, nearly 1,200 battle brothers with supporting vehicles and aircraft, began systematic operations against Hive Fleet Leviathan's outlying tendrils. The Crusade of Rage differed from typical Black Templar operations in its focus on void warfare and planetary evacuation rather than territorial control. Recognizing that worlds already targeted by the Tyrannids were often beyond saving, Marshal Amendora prioritized evacuating civilian populations and recovering geneseed from threatened Adeptus Astartes facilities. Once these objectives were secured, the Crusade forces would conduct exterminatus-level bombardments to deny the Tyrannids the biomass they sought, significantly slowing the Hive fleet's advance. This approach required close coordination with other Imperial organizations, particularly the Adeptus Mechanicus and Imperial Navy. The Black Templars provided escort for Mechanicus arcs evacuating Forge World production equipment, while Navy battle groups supported the chapter's strike cruisers during hit and run attacks on Tyrannid bioships. This degree of integration with conventional Imperial forces was unusual for the normally independent chapter, indicating the severity with which they viewed the Tyrannid threat. The most significant engagement of the Crusade occurred at the Forge World Innocence III, where a Mechanicus evacuation operation had stalled due to a Genestealer cult uprising. Marshal Amendora deployed 8 companies via drop pod directly into the primary manufactorum complexes, securing landing zones for Thunderhawk gunships to extract critical personnel and equipment. Meanwhile, Chaplain Varinius led a strike team into the depths of the Forge's reactor complex, where cult leaders had barricaded themselves with hostages from the Mechanicus hierarchy. The resulting close-quarters battle showcased the Black Templars' expertise in confined space operations. Fighting through narrow maintenance tunnels and reactor control chambers, Varinius's force eliminated the cult leaders with minimal hostage casualties, allowing the Forge's reactor to be safely shut down rather than detonated. This precision operation saved irreplaceable STC fragments and senior tech priests whose knowledge would have been lost with the world. Over the following 3 years, the Crusade of Rage engaged Tyrannid forces across 27 systems, successfully evacuating the populations of 13 worlds before they fell to the Hive fleet. The Crusade concluded not with a decisive victory, impossible against an enemy of the Tyrannid scale, but with the establishment of a containment perimeter that channeled the Hive fleet's advance away from particularly vulnerable sectors. This strategic redirection bought critical time for other Imperial forces to prepare defenses in the Hive fleet's new path. The formation of the Cicatrix Maledictum, the great rift that split the galaxy following the fall of Cadia, presented unprecedented challenges for all Imperial organizations, the Black Templars included. Crusade fleets found themselves isolated on either side of the warp anomaly, unable to communicate or coordinate with their brothers. Supply lines were severed, recruitment worlds cut off, and carefully planned campaigns rendered irrelevant by the new strategic reality. Marshal Athelstan's Throne Eternal Crusade experienced this disruption most directly, as the rift formed while his fleet was in transit between systems. The warp turbulence threw their vessels hundreds of light years off course, damaging several escorts beyond repair and killing nearly 100 battle brothers through Gellar field fluctuations. When the fleet finally emerged into real space, they found themselves in the Imperium Nihilus, the Dark Imperium, cut off from Terra and most of their chapter's strength. Rather than attempting to return across the virtually impassable rift, Athelstan established contact with local Imperial forces to assess the situation. What he discovered was dire. Without the light of the Astronomicon, many worlds had lost contact with their neighbors, leaving them vulnerable to opportunistic raiders and chaos cults. Planetary governors, unsure if the wider Imperium still existed, made desperate pacts with questionable allies or declared independence, further fragmenting Imperial authority. Athelstan determined that his Crusade fleet could best serve the Emperor by restoring stability to as many worlds as possible, creating islands of order in the chaotic darkness. His forces divided into task groups of approximately company strength, each assigned to secure a different system. These operations focused on eliminating immediate threats, re-establishing communication networks using conventional methods, and bolstering planetary defense forces with training and equipment. On the Forge world Dianaxis, Castellan Tavak's task group confronted a chaos warband that had exploited the confusion to seize control of the planet's primary manufactorum. The Black Templars' assault employed unconventional tactics necessitated by their limited numbers, with sword brethren infiltrating the facility disguised as corrupted forge workers before disabling key defense systems from within. This approach, though lacking the chapter's usual direct confrontation, allowed Tavak's 120 battle brothers to defeat a force nearly 10 times their size with minimal damage to critical infrastructure. Meanwhile, on the Shrine world Ophelia 7, Chaplain Gervais led efforts to counter a different kind of threat: despair. With the Emperor's light seemingly extinguished, many clergy had abandoned their duties or fallen to heretical interpretations, claiming the Emperor had forsaken humanity. Gervais established a training program for local fraterist militia, incorporating theological instruction alongside combat training. Within 6 months, these revitalized forces had purged heretical elements from 3 major cathedral cities, restoring Orthodox worship and stabilizing the planetary government. On the Imperium Sanctus side of the rift, High Marshal Helbrecht received Guilliman's call to join the Indomitus Crusade with initial skepticism. The Black Templars had operated independently for millennia, and coordination with other chapters, particularly those with different combat doctrines, presented potential conflicts. However, the strategic logic of Guilliman's plan was undeniable, and the opportunity to strike directly at the forces of chaos alongside the reborn Primarch proved too significant to ignore. Helbrecht committed approximately 600 battle brothers to the Indomitus Crusade, drawn primarily from Crusade fleets operating near Terra when the rift formed. These forces were organized into 3 battle groups, each assigned to a different expedition fleet within the broader Crusade structure. This arrangement allowed the Black Templars to maintain their internal command hierarchy while integrating with Guilliman's overall strategy. The chapter's contributions to the Indomitus Crusade played to their traditional strengths. Black Templar forces typically served as assault specialists, spearheading attacks against heavily defended objectives or counterattacking when expedition fleets encountered unexpected resistance. Their experience fighting across diverse environments and against virtually every enemy in the galaxy made them particularly valuable during the Crusade's early phases, when intelligence about conditions beyond the rift remained limited. During the liberation of the Lourdes system, Marshal Duval's battle group demonstrated the continuing effectiveness of the Black Templars' shock assault doctrine. When conventional attacks against chaos held Hive cities stalled due to extensive defensive preparations, Duval proposed a bold alternative: teleport insertions directly into the upper spires, where enemy commanders had established headquarters. Guilliman approved the plan despite its risks, recognizing that a decapitation strike could prevent a protracted siege. The operation succeeded beyond expectations, with Black Templar Terminator squads eliminating the leadership of 3 Chaos warbands in coordinated assaults. Without central direction, the defensive efforts collapsed, allowing Indomitus forces to secure the system with minimal casualties. This victory established a pattern that would repeat throughout the Crusade: Black Templar elite units targeting critical objectives, while other forces conducted broader operations. Perhaps the most significant development for the chapter during this period was their encounter with the Primaris Space Marines. When Guilliman first presented these enhanced warriors to the gathered chapter masters, Helbrecht's reaction combined caution with pragmatic acceptance. While some traditionalist elements within the chapter viewed the Primaris as potentially corrupted by their extended development on Mars, Helbrecht recognized their tactical value and the legitimacy of their creation under a Primarch's authority. The integration of Primaris Marines into the Black Templars proceeded more smoothly than in many chapters, facilitated by two key factors. First, the chapter's decentralized structure allowed individual marshals to incorporate Primaris warriors according to their own judgment rather than following a centralized directive. Some Crusade fleets embraced the new battle brothers immediately, while others adopted a more gradual approach, creating natural laboratories for different integration methods. Second, the Black Templars' emphasis on faith and zeal, rather than tactical orthodoxy, provided common ground that transcended physiological differences. Primaris Marines who demonstrated appropriate religious fervor found acceptance regardless of their origins, particularly after Chaplain Grimaldus publicly vouched for their spiritual authenticity following rigorous theological examination of several early transfers. The Primaris technologies brought significant enhancements to the chapter's capabilities. Repulsor tanks provided new tactical options for Crusade forces operating in difficult terrain, while Redemptor dreadnoughts offered improved support for assault operations. The bolt rifle's extended range partially compensated for the Black Templars' traditional weakness in sustained firefights, allowing them to engage enemies more effectively during the approach phase of attacks. Most importantly, the influx of Primaris reinforcements allowed the chapter to launch new Crusade fleets for the first time in several centuries. Marshal Erhardt's Vengeance from Beyond Crusade, comprised primarily of Primaris Marines with veteran officers, focused on reclaiming worlds in the Ultima Segmentum that had fallen to various xenos species during the confusion following the Rift's formation. Their operations against Drukhari raiders in the Ghoul Stars region demonstrated that the enhanced warriors had fully embraced the chapter's aggressive combat doctrine, conducting boarding actions against enemy vessels with the same fervor as their firstborn brothers. The creation of the Pariah Nexus by the awakening Necrons presented another significant challenge in the Dark Millennium. When reports reached High Marshal Helbrecht describing a region of space where psychic phenomena had been completely suppressed, he recognized both a threat and an opportunity. While the technology capable of creating such effects clearly posed a danger to humanity, the Black Templars' traditional suspicion of psychic powers made them better suited than most to operate in these conditions. Marshal Constantius, commanding the Sword of Retribution Crusade, received orders to investigate the Nexus's boundaries and assess the extent of Necron activity in the region. His forces encountered the ancient xenos on the frontier world Avarax, where Necron harvesting devices had begun converting the human population into raw materials for unknown purposes. The Black Templars' assault on the primary collection facility revealed a significant advantage. Their non-reliance on psychic abilities meant they suffered none of the disorientation affecting other Imperial forces in the region. This advantage proved decisive in subsequent engagements throughout the sector. While Imperial Guard units struggled with morale issues caused by the unnatural emptiness of the Pariah Nexus, and even other Astartes reported discomfort and reduced combat effectiveness, the Black Templars operated at full capacity. Constantius exploited this edge by volunteering his forces for the most difficult operations in the region, establishing the chapter as experts in anti-Necron warfare. The Battle of the Silent Plains demonstrated this expertise when Constantius's forces confronted a Necron phalanx attempting to activate a buried monolith. Recognizing the threat posed by the device, the Marshal deployed his entire command force in a direct assault against the Necron Lord overseeing the operation. While conventional wisdom advised against close engagement with the self-repairing xenos, the Black Templars' combat doctrine proved unexpectedly effective, as power weapons disrupted the Necrons' reanimation protocols when applied with sufficient force and precision. The Dark Millennium has tested the Black Templars as never before, with threats emerging simultaneously across all segmentums and contact between Crusade fleets often impossible for years at a time. Yet these challenges have in many ways validated the chapter's organizational model. Their decentralized command structure, with marshals empowered to make independent decisions based on local conditions, has proven remarkably resilient in an era when centralized authority often breaks down due to communication difficulties. As the Indomitus Crusade transitions into its second phase, and the Imperium begins the long process of adapting to the reality of the Great Rift, the Black Templars continue their eternal mission. New Crusade fleets launch regularly, incorporating both Primaris and Firstborn Marines in integrated companies. Ancient oaths are renewed, and new ones sworn, as the chapter faces threats that would have been unimaginable even to Sigismund. In the fire wastes of Armageddon, the hunt for Ghazghkull continues, with specialized strike teams following rumors of the warlord's movements across multiple systems. In the Pariah Nexus, Marshal Constantius's forces probe ever deeper into Necron territory, cataloging weaknesses in the ancient Xenos' defenses. Beyond the rift, isolated Crusade fleets maintain the Emperor's light in systems that might otherwise fall to darkness, their faith undiminished despite their separation from Terra. The dawn of the 42nd millennium finds the Black Templars at a critical juncture in their long history. With the galaxy split by the Great Rift and ancient threats emerging from the shadows, the chapter faces unprecedented challenges. Yet for an organization founded on the principle of eternal warfare, these challenges represent not a crisis, but a fulfillment of purpose, an opportunity to demonstrate their unwavering faith through deeds of arms across a galaxy more desperate than ever for defenders. The true strength of the Black Templars has long been a subject of speculation among imperial administrators and rival military organizations. While officially maintaining the Codex-mandated 1,000 battle brothers, the chapter's actual numbers are almost certainly far greater. Conservative estimates from Department Munitorum logistics experts place their fighting strength at approximately 5,000–6,000 warriors, though some reports suggest the number could be significantly higher. This numerical advantage stems from the chapter's unique organizational structure. With Crusade fleets operating independently across the galaxy, each maintaining its own recruitment and training programs, no single authority, not even the High Marshal, maintains a comprehensive accounting of all Black Templar forces. The chapter's practice of drawing aspirants from multiple worlds rather than a single homeworld further obscures their true numbers, as does their tendency to operate outside standard Imperial command structures. The Primaris reinforcements introduced following Guilliman's return have only expanded this advantage. While many chapters received fixed allocations of these enhanced warriors, the Black Templars' dispersed nature made precise distribution impossible. Instead, Primaris Marines were assigned to multiple Crusade fleets simultaneously, with minimal central coordination. Whether by accident or design, this approach resulted in the chapter receiving reinforcements proportional to their actual size rather than their official complement. Marshal Theoderic, whose Crusade of the Burning Star operates in the Ultima Segmentum, exemplifies how the chapter has integrated these new warriors. Rather than maintaining separate Primaris and Firstborn companies, Theoderic distributed the enhanced Battle Brothers throughout his command, creating mixed units that capitalize on the strengths of both types of Astartes. Intercessor squads provide sustained firepower during the approach phase, suppressing enemy positions until assault squads and Crusader squads can close to melee range. Aggressors operate alongside Terminator squads as heavy support, their differing capabilities allowing tactical flexibility impossible with homogeneous units. This pragmatic approach to integration reflects the chapter's focus on combat effectiveness over doctrinal purity. While some traditionalist elements initially viewed the Primaris with suspicion, their concerns have largely been addressed through the chapter's rigorous spiritual screening. Chaplains subject all Primaris candidates to extensive theological examination, ensuring they embrace the Black Templars' religious fervor regardless of their origins. Those who demonstrate appropriate zeal find acceptance, while those who maintain the more secular outlook common among Mars-trained Primaris are redirected to other Imperial Fist successor chapters. The dispersed nature of Black Templar forces represents both their greatest strength and most significant challenge. At any given time, dozens of Crusade fleets operate across the galaxy, each pursuing objectives determined by its commanding marshal in consultation with the High Marshal. These fleets vary considerably in size and composition, from small strike forces of 100 battle brothers to massive armadas numbering in the thousands. The Eternal Crusade, commanded directly by High Marshal Helbrecht, remains the chapter's largest and most prestigious formation. Operating primarily in the Segmentum Solar and neighboring regions of Segmentum Tempestus, this fleet serves as the chapter's strategic reserve and rapid response force. Its composition shifts regularly as elements are detached to reinforce other crusades or address emerging threats, but it typically maintains a core of approximately 1,500 battle brothers with corresponding vehicle support and fleet assets. The Crusade of Wrath, under Marshal Amalrich, focuses on combating chaos incursions along the borders of the Eye of Terror and the Cicatrix Maledictum. This fleet has grown significantly since the Great Rift's formation, absorbing elements from other crusades cut off from their original commands. Amalrich's forces specialize in void warfare and boarding actions, with a higher proportion of Terminator armor and assault specialists than most Crusade fleets. Their operations often involve striking at Chaos Fleet concentrations before they can organize major incursions into Imperial space. The Neovera Crusade, led by Marshal Rickard, operates in the Galactic South, countering Necron awakening in several sectors adjacent to the Pariah Nexus. This crusade has developed specialized tactics for engaging the ancient xenos, including the use of modified power weapons calibrated to disrupt Necron reanimation protocols. Rickard maintains close coordination with Adeptus Mechanicus exploration teams studying Necron technology, providing protection in exchange for tactical intelligence about Necron capabilities and weaknesses. In the Ultima Segmentum, Marshal Constantine's Sword of Defiance crusade confronts the expanding tendrils of Hive Fleet Leviathan. Drawing on experience gained during the Crusade of Rage, Constantine's forces employ highly mobile warfare, striking at Tyranid Synapse creatures before withdrawing to avoid becoming entangled with the swarm's countless organisms. This crusade includes a higher proportion of vehicle support than most, including specialized Land Raider variants equipped with flamers and melta-weapons, particularly effective against Tyranid bioforms. Beyond these major formations, numerous smaller crusade fleets address specific threats or pursue independent objectives. The Crusade of the Sacred Blood, comprising just 300 battle brothers under Castellan Drogo, focuses on recovering chapter relics lost during the turmoil following the Great Rift's formation. The Sword of Terra Crusade, led by Marshal Venclius, operates exclusively in the Imperium Nihilus, maintaining Imperial authority in systems cut off from Terra's light. The Crusade of Righteous Liberation specializes in breaking sieges and relieving beleaguered Imperial worlds, arriving at seemingly hopeless situations to turn the tide through precisely targeted shock assaults. Coordination between these dispersed forces presents significant challenges, particularly since the Great Rift's formation disrupted astropathic communication across much of the galaxy. High Marshal Helbrecht addresses this problem through a combination of traditional and innovative methods. Scheduled conclave gatherings bring marshals together when possible, allowing face-to-face coordination of strategic objectives. Dedicated astropathic choirs aboard the Eternal Crusader maintain continuous communication attempts with all known Crusade fleets, though success rates vary dramatically depending on warp conditions. More novel is the chapter's adoption of data drone networks, autonomous voidcraft carrying encrypted tactical information between Crusade fleets operating in the same region. Based on Adeptus Mechanicus designs, but modified by Black Templar techmarines, these drones follow predetermined routes through real space, providing reliable if slow communication in areas where warp transmission proves impossible. This system has proven particularly valuable in the Imperium Nihilus, where conventional astropathic messages often fail entirely. The strategic vision guiding these dispersed operations comes primarily from High Marshal Helbrecht, whose leadership has proven remarkably adaptive during the crises of the 42nd millennium. Where previous High Marshals focused primarily on continuity, maintaining the eternal crusade as Sigismund envisioned it, Helbrecht has demonstrated willingness to evolve the chapter's approach in response to changing circumstances while preserving its core identity and purpose. This evolution appears most clearly in Helbrecht's response to Guilliman's return and the subsequent Indomitus Crusade. Unlike some chapter masters who viewed the Lord Commander's authority with suspicion or resentment, Helbrecht recognized the strategic opportunity presented by coordinated action under Primarch leadership. The Black Templars committed significant forces to Guilliman's crusade, integrating their operations with other Imperial forces more thoroughly than at any time since the Great Crusade era. This cooperation has continued beyond the Indomitus Crusade itself, with Black Templar forces frequently operating alongside other reconquest efforts organized under Guilliman's strategic framework. Helbrecht appears to have recognized that the traditional independence of Crusade fleets, while valuable for addressing scattered threats, must be balanced with coordinated action against the unprecedented challenges facing the Imperium. This represents not abandonment of chapter traditions, but their adaptation to new strategic realities. Helbrecht's vision extends beyond immediate tactical concerns to address the chapter's long-term sustainability. Recognizing that the Great Rift has cut off access to many traditional recruitment worlds, he has directed Crusade fleets to identify and develop new sources of aspirants, particularly in the Imperium Nihilus, where Imperial authority has weakened. This initiative has already yielded results, with several promising recruitment worlds established in regions that might otherwise have lost contact with the Imperium entirely. Similarly, Helbrecht has expanded the chapter's network of Forge alliances, establishing new agreements with Adeptus Mechanicus facilities capable of producing specialized equipment for Black Templar forces. These arrangements typically involve reciprocal obligations, with the chapter providing protection for Mechanicus exploration teams or escort for supply convoys in exchange for priority access to production capacity. Such practical arrangements bypass the theological tensions that have historically complicated relations between the organizations, focusing instead on mutual benefit. Perhaps most significantly, Helbrecht has refined the chapter's approach to target selection and strategic prioritization. Where traditional Black Templar doctrine emphasized continuous offensive operations against the widest possible range of enemies, current directives focus on threats that specifically undermine Imperial stability or threaten critical resource worlds. This more discriminating approach allows the chapter to maximize its impact despite the galaxy's increasingly chaotic state, concentrating forces against targets whose elimination provides disproportionate strategic benefits. This evolution in strategic thinking has occurred alongside significant theological developments within the chapter. The return of a Primarch, a living link to the Emperor himself, has forced the Black Templars to reconsider certain aspects of their religious understanding, particularly regarding the relationship between faith and the secular imperial truth that Guilliman represents. Chaplain Grimaldus, whose influence within the chapter has grown substantially since his actions at Hellsreach, has led internal theological discussions addressing this apparent contradiction. Rather than viewing Guilliman's secular approach as opposition to the chapter's faith, Grimaldus has developed an interpretation that sees the Primarch as fulfilling a specific role within the Emperor's broader design, the practical administrator complementing the spiritual guidance provided through faith. This theological innovation has helped the chapter maintain its religious identity while adapting to changed circumstances. Black Templars continue their devotional practices, viewing combat as an act of worship and victory as confirmation of divine favor. However, they now more readily acknowledge the practical necessities of imperial governance and the value of cooperation with organizations that may not share their spiritual perspective. This balance between zealous faith and practical cooperation represents a significant maturation of the chapter's worldview. The theological evolution extends to the chapter's relationship with the Primaris Marines incorporated into their ranks. Initial concerns about these warriors' spiritual authenticity have largely been resolved through a combination of rigorous screening and targeted religious instruction. Chaplains work closely with Primaris battle brothers, guiding them through the chapter's devotional practices and helping them develop the personal spiritual disciplines expected of all Black Templars. This process has been facilitated by the emergence of Primaris chaplains within the chapter, warriors who combine the enhanced physical capabilities of Primaris Marines with traditional Black Templar religious fervor. These individuals serve as bridges between the established spiritual traditions and the new generation of warriors, demonstrating through their own example that the Primaris enhancements are compatible with the chapter's faith-based approach to warfare. The chapter's theological position regarding psykers has also evolved, though more subtly. While maintaining their traditional suspicion of warp-based powers, the Black Templars have developed more nuanced approaches to dealing with sanctioned psykers within imperial forces. Rather than the outright rejection common in earlier millennia, current doctrine emphasizes containment and supervision, allowing allied psykers to contribute their capabilities while chaplains monitor for signs of corruption or excess. This pragmatic adjustment reflects the chapter's recognition of the increased importance of psychic warfare in the 42nd millennium, particularly against enemies like the Thousand Sons and Tyranids who employ such powers extensively. By developing effective protocols for cooperation with imperial psykers while maintaining their own non-psychic combat doctrine, the Black Templars have addressed a traditional weakness without compromising their core identity. As the Dark Millennium unfolds, the Black Templars stand as one of humanity's most formidable and adaptable defenders. Their combination of religious fervor and practical combat expertise makes them uniquely suited to an era where both spiritual resolve and tactical flexibility prove essential for survival. Their dispersed Crusade fleets ensure that the Emperor's judgment reaches even the most distant corners of the fractured Imperium, while their growing numbers provide strategic depth that few other chapters can match. High Marshal Helbrecht continues to guide the chapter through these turbulent times, balancing respect for tradition with necessary innovation. Under his leadership, the Black Templars have embraced the opportunities presented by Primaris reinforcements while maintaining their distinctive combat doctrine and spiritual practices. They have developed new tactical approaches for emerging threats while preserving the aggressive, close-quarters focus that has defined them since Sigismund's time. The eternal crusade that began in the aftermath of the Horus Heresy thus continues into the 42nd millennium, adapting to changed circumstances while remaining true to its founding purpose. Across the fractured galaxy, Black Templar warriors still take their oaths of moment before battle, still seek out the mightiest enemies for personal combat, still view their service as an act of devotion to the Emperor they revere as divine. Though the specific challenges may differ from those Sigismund faced, the response remains the same: unwavering faith expressed through relentless warfare against all who threaten humanity's rightful dominion. In this way, the Black Templars embody a paradox at the heart of the Imperium itself, an organization simultaneously resistant to change and remarkably adaptable. Their core principles remain fixed, their devotion unquestioned, their purpose clear. Yet within this framework of constancy, they continuously evolve their tactics, their organization, and even their theology to address new threats and circumstances. This combination of stability and flexibility has ensured their survival and effectiveness across 10 millennia of continuous warfare, and seems likely to sustain them through whatever challenges the dark future may bring. As new Crusade fleets launch and ancient ones continue their long campaigns, the Black Templars remain what they have always been: warriors of absolute faith and purpose, bringing the Emperor's judgment to his enemies across the stars. Their eternal crusade continues, unbroken since the days of their founding, a testament to the enduring power of faith, duty, and the uncompromising vision of their first High Marshal. In a galaxy of uncertainty and change, the Black Templars stand as a constant, their purpose unwavering, their resolve unbroken, their crusade truly eternal.